The Odyssey of Homer's Odyssey, translated by Richmond Lattimore, is the foundational epic of Western literature, a poem of roughly 12,100 lines of dactylic hexameter recounting the 10-year homecoming of Odysseus, lord of Ithaca, after the fall of Troy. This forensic examination follows the poem's arc from the Council of the Gods through the reunion of husband and wife, tracing the epic's meditation on identity, loyalty, cunning, and the meaning of home. Abstract. Homer's Odyssey is the foundational narrative of Western literature, a poem that invents the novel, the thriller, and the road story in a single breath. This forensic examination follows the journey of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, from his 20-year absence after the fall of Troy through his trials among gods and monsters, his disguise as a nameless beggar, and his final reckoning with the suitors who consumed his wealth and pursued his wife. The poem spans 24 books and traces two parallel arcs: Telemachus' search for his father and Odysseus' return to a home that has become a house of enemies. Through close reading of both the Lattimore and Fagel's translations, this analysis reveals the poem's architecture, how each adventure is a mirror of the one before, how each recognition scene is earned through suffering, and how the theme of Nostos, homecoming, resonates not only in Odysseus' journey, but in the very structure of the poem itself. The Odyssey is not merely a story of return. It is an investigation into what it means to be human in a world governed by gods, and what it costs to reclaim one's identity after years of transformation. Executive summary. Central thesis. The Odyssey argues that true heroism lies not in the battlefield glory of the Iliad, but in the patient endurance of suffering, the cunning navigation of obstacles, and the faithful return to one's home and identity. Odysseus is the first anti-hero, a man who survives not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the most adaptable, the most deceptive, and the most determined to preserve what makes him who he is. The poem's moral framework is built on the concept of xenia, guest friendship, and its dramatic arc traces the restoration of order to a household and a kingdom that have been violated by men who forgot that their privilege came with obligations. The gods are not distant abstractions, but active forces, Athene and Poseidon pulling Odysseus between them, and yet the poem insists that human choice remains the decisive factor. Odysseus must choose to leave Calypso's paradise. He must choose to endure the siren's song. He must choose to conceal his identity until the moment is right. The Odyssey is, finally, a poem about the cost of wisdom, what Odysseus loses in order to gain the knowledge that brings him home. Foundational observations. The architecture of parallel journeys. The poem's double structure, Telemachus searching for his father while Odysseus searches for his home, creates a narrative of mutual longing. Father and son become mirrors of each other, each learning what it means to be a man through the other's absence. Cunning as the supreme virtue. Where the Iliad celebrates brute strength, the Odyssey celebrates métis, cunning intelligence. Odysseus defeats the Cyclops not with a spear, but with a lie. He defeats the suitors not with an army, but with a bow contest. He survives Circe and Calypso not through violence, but through patience and persuasion. The theology of contested fate. The gods in the Odyssey are not monolithic forces, but competing interests. Athene and Poseidon embody the poem's central tension between mercy and punishment, between the desire to help and the will to destroy, and their conflict is never fully resolved. Recognition as the poem's deepest act. The recognition scenes, Odysseus and Euryclea, Odysseus and Penelope, Odysseus and Laertes, are not mere plot twists but philosophical investigations into identity. The scar, the bed, the olive tree. These are not tricks but proofs, the marks of a self that cannot be erased by time or transformation. The politics of hospitality. The violation of xenia by the suitors is the poem's moral engine. Their crime is not merely greed, but sacrilege, the desecration of a sacred bond that holds civilization together. Odysseus's slaughter of the suitors is not revenge, but restoration, the re-establishment of order in a world that has been violated. The cost of Nostos, Homecoming in the Odyssey is not a return to innocence, but a transformation through suffering. Odysseus does not come back the same man who left. He comes back wiser, harder, and more alone, a man who has seen the worst of the world and must now find a way to live in it. Significance and recommendation. The Odyssey remains the most influential narrative poem in Western literature. Its themes, the search for identity, the struggle against fate, the cost of homecoming, continue to resonate in every age. This analysis is recommended for readers who wish to understand not only the poem's plot, but its architecture, how each book mirrors the one before, how each adventure is a test of character, and how the final recognition between Odysseus and Penelope earns its power through 20 years of separation. The dual translation approach, Lattimore for literal fidelity, Fagles for poetic momentum, reveals dimensions of the poem that neither translation captures alone. Readers interested in epic poetry, classical mythology, narrative theory, or the foundations of Western literature will find this examination essential. The Odyssey is not a relic of the ancient world. It is a living text that continues to speak to the fundamental human questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? What must I endure to become myself? Book 1. Sing, Muse, of the man of many ways, who was driven far journeys after he had sacked Troy's sacred citadel. Many were they whose cities he saw, whose minds he learned of, many the pains he suffered in his spirit on the wide sea, struggling for his own life and the homecoming of his companions. Even so, he could not save his companions, hard though he strove to. They were destroyed by their own wild recklessness, fools who devoured the oxen of Helios, the sun god, and he took away the day of their homecoming. So opens the tale, and the singer's voice reaches at once for the gods. All the others, as many as fled sheer destruction, were at home now, having escaped the sea and the fighting. This one alone, longing for his wife and his homecoming, was detained by the queenly nymph Calypso, bright among goddesses in her hallowed caverns, desiring that he should be her husband. But when in the circling of the years that very year came in which the gods had spun for him his time of homecoming to Ithaca, not even then was he free of his trials, nor among his own people. But all the gods pitied him, godlike Odysseus. Except Poseidon, he remained relentlessly angry with him until his return to his own country. Poseidon was gone now to visit the far Ethiopians, most distant of men, who lived divided, some at the setting of Hyperion, some at his rising, to receive a hecatomb of bulls and rams. There he sat at the feast and took his pleasure. Meanwhile, the other Olympian gods were gathered together in the halls of Zeus. First among them to speak was the father of gods and mortals, for he was thinking in his heart of stately Aegisthus, whom Orestes, Agamemnon's far-famed son, had murdered. Remembering him, he spoke now before the immortals. "Oh, for shame! How the mortals put the blame upon us gods, for they say evils come from us. But it is they, rather, who by their own recklessness win sorrow beyond what is given, as now lately Aegisthus married the wife of Atreus' son, and murdered him on his homecoming, though he knew it was sheer destruction, for we ourselves had told him, sending Hermes, the mighty watcher, Argiphantes, not to kill the man, nor court his lady for marriage." The speech of Zeus establishes the moral framework of the entire poem. Mortals are not passive victims of divine caprice, but active agents who compound their own suffering through recklessness. Aegisthus chose his fate despite warning. Odysseus will choose his through cunning. The parallel is deliberate. Both men face the consequences of action, but where Aegisthus brought ruin upon himself, Odysseus will find the gods working both for and against him. Gray-eyed Athene answers for the immortals. "Father, son of Kronos, lord of all the immortals, what you have said is right. Cunning Odysseus was the best of the mortals, but we too should care for him, each of us gods in our own way, now that Poseidon the earth-shaker is angry with him." Athene's plea is the engine of the plot. She will visit Odysseus's son Telemachus, now a young man of 20, still a boy when his father left for Troy. The suitors have occupied the house, eating the substance of the estate, courting his mother Penelope, who waits with the patience of the sea for a man who may never return. Telemachus sits among them, his heart grieving within him, thinking of his great father, how he might come back and all throughout the house might cause the suitors to scatter and hold his rightful place and be lord of his own possessions. Athene comes as Mentes, lord of the Taphians, and Telemachus receives her with the courtesy his father would have shown. He seats her in a chair of honor, apart from the suitors, for fear the guest might lose his appetite among overbearing people. The scene is Telemachus' first act of lordship. He conducts himself as his father's son, recognizing the sacred obligation of hospitality even in the midst of his own distress. Athene asks about the feast, and Telemachus tells her of the ruin that has befallen the house. The suitors devour the cattle, the sheep, the fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling the wine as if there is no tomorrow, all of it squandered. Now we have no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. We ourselves? We're hardly the ones to fight them off. All we do is parade our wretched weakness. The speech is the cry of a young man who knows he is not yet what his father was. Athene responds with a prophecy wrapped in encouragement. Odysseus lives, detained on a sea-washed island, but he will not long be absent from the beloved land of his fathers. Then she gives Telemachus a plan. Assemble the island's lords, call the suitors to account, fit out a ship and sail to Pylos and Sparta to learn news of his father. You must not cling to your boyhood any longer. It's time you were a man. Haven't you heard what glory Prince Orestes won throughout the world when he killed that cunning, murderous Aegisthus, who'd killed his famous father? The invocation of Orestes is both a model and a threat. Orestes avenged his father and won immortal glory. Telemachus must do the same or be remembered as the son who let his house be devoured. Athene departs like a bird soaring high in the air, but she leaves in his spirit determination and courage, and he remembers his father even more than he had before. At the assembly the next day, Telemachus stands and speaks. The old man Egyptius is the first to answer, weeping for the son he has lost. Antiphas, swallowed by the Cyclops in the caves of Polyphemus, a story that echoes Odysseus' own fate with the one-eyed monster. Telemachus tells the assembly of his grief. Suitors plague my mother, against her will, sons of the very men who are your finest here. They'd sooner die than approach her father's house, so Icarius himself might see to his daughter's bridal, hand her to whom he likes, whoever meets his fancy. Not they. They infest our palace day and night. They butcher our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling our glowing wine as if there's no tomorrow, all of it squandered. Antinous answers with practiced arrogance. The suitors are not to blame. He says, it is Penelope who leads them on, weaving a funeral shroud for Laertes by day and unraveling it by night, keeping them dangling for 3 years. Telemachus never knew his mother had such a trick. Eurymachus follows with smoother words, asking about the stranger. Who is he? Where does he come from? Has he brought news of Odysseus? Telemachus answers carefully, calling the stranger Mentes, an old family friend, though deep in his mind he knew the immortal goddess. The suitors return to their feast, to dance and song, to the lovely beat and sway, waiting for dusk to come upon them. Telemachus retires to his room, his spirit swarming with misgivings. The devoted nurse Euryclea attends him, bearing a glowing torch. She who nursed him as a baby, the one of all the maids who loved the prince the most. He lies awake, thinking of the journey ahead, of the father he has never known, of the mother who waits in her chamber, weaving and unweaving the cloth of her own hope. Quote, tell me, muse of the man of many ways, who has driven far journeys, after he had sacked Troy's sacred citadel. Many were they whose cities he saw, whose minds he learned of, many the pains he suffered in his spirit on the wide sea, struggling for his own life and the homecoming of his companions. Quote, oh, for shame, how the mortals put the blame upon us gods, for they say evils come from us, but it is they rather who by their own recklessness win sorrow beyond what is given. Book 2. when a young dawn showed again with her rosy fingers. The dear son of Odysseus stirred from where he was sleeping, and put on his clothes, and slung a sharp sword over his shoulder. Underneath his shining feet he bound the fair sandals, and went on his way from the chamber, like a god in presence. He gave the word now to his clear-voiced heralds to summon by proclamation to assembly the flowing-haired Achaeans, and the heralds made their cry, and the men were assembled swiftly. Telemachus comes to the assembly armed, 2 light-footed dogs at his heels, and Athene drifts an enchantment of grace upon him. The people have their eyes on him as he comes forward, and the elders make way for him in his father's seat. The first to speak is the old Lord Aegisthus, bent with age, whose own son Antiphas was devoured by the Cyclops in the caves, a wound that echoes Odysseus's own fate, though Odysseus escaped and Antiphas did not. The old man weeps as he asks who has summoned them, and the answer comes from Telemachus himself. The son of Odysseus speaks with a new voice, the voice of a man who has been pushed past the edge of patience. He tells the assembly of the ruin that has befallen his house. Suitors plague my mother, against her will, sons of the very men who are your finest here. They'd sooner die than approach her father's house, so Icarius himself might see to his daughter's bridal, hand her to whom he likes, whoever meets his fancy. Not they, they infest our palace day and night. They butcher our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swilling our glowing wine as if there's no tomorrow. All of it squandered. Now we have no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. We ourselves? We're hardly the ones to fight them off. Antinous answers with practiced arrogance, telling the assembly that Penelope leads the suitors on with her weaving trick. By day, she weaves a funeral shroud for Laertes. By night, she unravels it, keeping them dangling for 3 years. Since she is so dowered with the wisdom bestowed by Athene, to be expert in beautiful work, to have good character and cleverness, such as we're not told of, even of the ancient queens, the fair-tressed Achaean women of times before us. The praise is poisoned. It acknowledges Penelope's excellence while twisting it into an accusation of manipulation. Telemachus answers with a dignity that surprises even himself. I cannot thrust the mother who bore me, who raised me, out of the house against her will. My father, alive or dead, is elsewhere in the world. It will be hard to pay back Icarius if willingly I dismiss my mother. He appeals to the gods, and far-seeing Zeus sends down a sign. 2 eagles soaring high from mountain ridge, circling and thrashing in the air above the assembly, a glaring, fatal sign. The old prophet Halitherses reads the omen. Odysseus will not be far from loved ones much longer, and a great disaster is rolling like a breaker toward the suitors' heads. Then Telemachus makes his request. Grant me a swift ship and 20 companions who can convey me on a course from one place to another. For I am going to Sparta and going to sandy Pylos to ask about the homecoming of my father, who is long absent. Mentor, once the companion of stately Odysseus, rises to speak in his favor, rebuking the people for their passivity. No longer now let one who is a sceptered king be eager to be gentle and kind, be one whose thought is schooled in justice, but let him always rather be harsh and act severely. But the suitors mock him. One calls him a murderer to be, heading to Pylos to hire cutthroats. Another wonders if he will drown far from his friends, a drifter like his father. Telemachus goes down to his father's storeroom, where Euryclea, the devoted nurse who nursed him as a baby, draws him wine and barley. He asks her to keep his secret from his mother for 11 days, so that she may not ruin her lovely skin with weeping. Athene, in the likeness of Telemachus, goes through the city and gathers the crew. She asks Nomon for a fast ship, and he gives it with good will. As darkness falls, she draws the ship down to the sea and stows the gear. Then she goes to the house of Odysseus and strikes the suitors with sleep, knocking the goblets from their hands. Telemachus boards the ship, and the men cast off the stern cables. The goddess sends them a favoring stern wind, strong zephyros, and all night long the ship runs on her journey across the wine-blue water. Quote, Now we have no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. We ourselves? We're hardly the ones to fight them off. All we do is parade our wretched weakness. Quote, I cannot thrust the mother who bore me, who raised me, out of the house against her will. My father, alive or dead, is elsewhere in the world. It will be hard to pay back Icarios, if willingly I dismiss my mother. Book 3. Helios, leaving behind the lovely standing waters, rose up into the brazen sky to shine upon the immortals and also on mortal men across the grain-giving farmland. They came to Pylos, Nelea's strong-founded citadel, where the people on the shore of the sea were making sacrifice of bulls who were all black to the dark-haired earth-shaker. There were 9 settlements of them, and in each 500 holdings, and from each of these 9 bulls were provided. Telemachus and his guide arrive at the feast on the beach, and the gray-eyed goddess Athene speaks first. Telemachus, here is no more need at all of modesty, for this was why you sailed on the open sea, to find news of your father, what soil covers him, what fate he has met with. So come now, go straight up to Nestor, breaker of horses, for we know what intelligence is hidden inside him. You yourself must entreat him to speak the whole truth to you. He will not tell you any falsehood. He is too thoughtful. Telemachus answers with the self-doubt of a young man who has never had to speak before such company. Mentor, how shall I go up to him? How close with him? I have no experience in close discourse. There is embarrassment for a young man who must question his elder. They come to where the men of Pylos are gathered in session, where Nestor sits with his sons and companions arranging the feast. Nestor's son, Pisistratos, welcomes them with the courtesy his father would have shown, and gives Telemachus a share of the innards, pours wine in a golden cup, and lifts it toward Athene, though she, being a goddess, will not drink. Instead, she raises the cup and prays to Poseidon. Hear me, Poseidon, earth-encompassing, hear God, and grant success to Telemachus and myself. And to all of us you shall grant a good fortune. Nestor asks Telemachus why he has come, and the young man speaks of his quest, to find news of his father, Odysseus, who is long absent. Come now, father, tell me the whole truth, what news you heard of the man, how he perished, or tell me if you have any knowledge of him. For no death on the land has befallen the great Odysseus, but somewhere alive on the wide sea, he is held captive on a sea-washed island, and savage men have him in their keeping, rough men, who somehow keep him back, though he is unwilling. Nestor answers with the story of the homecoming, the long, bitter trail of the Greeks from Troy. He tells of the quarrel between Agamemnon and Menelaus, of Aegisthus who sat at home and charmed the wife of Agamemnon, of the singer given instructions to watch over her, of the doom of the gods that entangled Clytemnestra. For we were sitting out there and accomplishing many hard tasks while he, at ease deep in the corner of horse-pasturing Argos, kept talking to Agamemnon's wife and trying to charm her. Nestor tells of Menelaus detained at Saunium by the death of his steersman Phrontis, of the storms that drove him far off course to Egypt, of the long years he spent gathering wealth before returning home, and of himself. We, driven apart by the winds, were separated. Agamemnon drove the men on and put into land where the Myrmidons have their dwellings. But I, the winds and gods having brought me, made my run to Phoia and to the curve of sandy Aegilion. The story is told in fragments, pieced together from memory and report, each piece carrying its own weight of loss. Of Odysseus himself, Nestor knows little. We knew nothing of him, nor did any of the Achaeans who were left behind, not if he was still alive or if he was dead. The words are a dead end, but they are honest ones. Nestor is too thoughtful to lie, even when the truth offers no comfort. Then Nestor speaks of Orestes, the son who avenged his father, the same model that Athene invoked for Telemachus in Book 1. Here, dear boy, and attend to what I say. You will get honor and be dear to immortals, if you are careful and remember. For the rest of them I do not blame, not the Achaeans or the Myrmidons, not even Ajax the Great and the sons of Atreus, who died in a great slaughter. For they have in the house of Hades their fate, and men in after time have honored them with a burial mound. And yet of his companions, glorious Antilochos, the one who died in battle, him we honored. We cut down timber and raised a great mound on the wide headland. And on it there are left the young men and the Argives to have it for a memorial in aftertime. But no grave tumulus for Odysseus. We know nothing where he lies. Nestor's words are both a lament and a charge. Odysseus has no grave, no memorial. He lives or dies without the dignity of a known ending. Telemachus must find him, or at least find the truth. The old king offers hospitality and sends Telemachus to Sparta with his son Pisistratos in a chariot drawn by the best horses. Quote, "For we were sitting out there and accomplishing many hard tasks while he, at ease deep in the corner of horse-pasturing Argos, kept talking to Agamemnon's wife and trying to charm her." Quote, "We know nothing of him, nor did any of the Achaeans who were left behind, not if he was still alive or if he was dead." Book 4. They came into the cavernous hollow of Lake Damon and made their way to the house of glorious Menelaus. They found him in his own house giving, for many townsmen, a wedding feast for his son and his stately daughter. The girl he was sending to the son of Achilles, breaker of battalions, for in Troyland first he had nodded his head to it and promised to give her, and now the gods were bringing to pass their marriage. So he was sending her on her way, with horses and chariots, to the famous city of the Myrmidons, where Neoptolemus was lord. And he brought Alector's daughter from Sparta to give powerful Megapenthes, his young grown son born to him by a slave woman. But the gods gave no more children to Helen once she had borne her first and only child, the lovely Hermione, with the beauty of Aphrodite the Golden. Telemachus and Pisistratos arrive at the feast, and Menelaus, fair-haired and generous, receives them with the warmth that the Odyssey extends to all who honor the sacred bond of hospitality. Unharness the strangers' horses then, and bring the men here to be feasted, he tells his henchman Edeonius, and the guests are given baths, food, and wine. But it is Helen, daughter of Zeus, who first recognizes the young man. She sees in him the likeness of Odysseus, the feet, the hands, the glances of the eyes, the head, and the hair growing. My heart tells me to speak, for I think I never saw such a likeness, neither in man nor woman, and wonder takes me as I look on him, as this man has a likeness to the son of great-hearted Odysseus. Menelaus agrees, and Pisistratos confirms. This is in truth the son of that man, just as you were saying, but he is modest, and his spirit would be shocked at the thought of coming here and beginning a show of reckless language. Helen's recognition is the hinge of the book. She speaks of Odysseus in Troy, of how he came disguised as a beggar into the city, how she alone recognized him even in that form. He flagellated himself with degrading strokes, then threw on the likeness of somebody else, a beggar, one who was unlike himself beside the ships of the Achaeans, but in his likeness crept into the Trojan city, and they all were taken in. I alone recognized him even in this form, and I questioned him, but he in his craftiness eluded me. But after I bathed him and anointed him with olive oil and put some clothing upon him, after I had sworn a great oath not to disclose before the Trojans that this was Odysseus until he had made his way back to the fast ships and the shelters, then at last he told me all the purpose of the Achaeans. And after striking many Trojans down with a thin bronze edge, he went back to the Argives and brought back much information. The confession is remarkable. Helen, who was the cause of the war, becomes the instrument of its resolution. She aided Odysseus within Troy itself, betraying the city that had taken her in. The rest of the Trojan women cried out shrill, but my heart was happy. My heart had changed by now and was for going back home again, and I grieved for the madness that Aphrodite bestowed when she led me there away from my own dear country, forsaking my own daughter, my bedchamber, and my husband, a man who lacked no endowment either of brains or beauty. Menelaus adds his own memory of Odysseus, of the wooden horse where the greatest of the Argives sat bringing death and destruction to the Trojans. In my time I have studied the wit and counsel of many men who were heroes, and I have been over much of the world, Yet nowhere have I seen with my own eyes anyone like him, nor known an inward heart like the heart of enduring Odysseus. The praise is intimate, earned through years of shared suffering. Menelaus tells of the quarrel of the horse, of how Odysseus dragged him back when he was about to call out, the kind of moment that defines a friendship forged in war. Then Menelaus tells of his own longing for Odysseus. I'd have settled a city in Argos for him, built him a palace, shipped him over from Ithaca, him and all his wealth, his son, his people too, emptied one of the cities nestling round about us, one I rule myself. Both fellow countrymen then, how often we'd have mingled side by side. Nothing could have parted us, bound by love for each other, mutual delight, till death's dark cloud came shrouding round us both. But God himself, jealous of all this, no doubt, robbed that unlucky man, him and him alone, of the day of his return. The grief is raw, and Helen dissolves in tears. Telemachus weeps, and so does Menelaus. Then Menelaus tells the story of Proteus, the old man of the sea, who knew the fates of all the Greeks. Stranded on the island of Pharos, becalmed for 20 days with his men starving, Menelaus was visited by Eidothea, daughter of Proteus. She showed him how to ambush her father, to lie in wait with 4 companions, and seize the ancient god as he emerged from the sea to sleep in the caves. When Proteus changed form, to lion, serpent, leopard, liquid fire, Menelaus held fast, and the god finally surrendered. Proteus told him of the deaths and homecomings of the Greeks. Many of these men who were lost, and many left over, but 2 alone who were leaders of the bronze-armored Achaeans died on the way home. Ajax was lost, and his long-oared vessels with him. First of all, Poseidon drove him against the great rocks of Gyrae, and yet he saved him out of the water, and Ajax would have escaped his doom, though Athene hated him, had he not gone wildly mad and tossed out a word of defiance. The madness and death of Ajax, the great warrior who was second only to Achilles, echoes through the poem as a reminder that even the greatest men can be undone by pride. Of Odysseus, Proteus says only, Laertes' son, who makes his home in Ithaca, I saw him once on an island, weeping live warm tears in the nymph Calypso's house. She holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his own native land. No trim ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. The words are both a confirmation and a lament. Odysseus lives, but he is trapped. And of Menelaus himself, Proteus offers a prophecy unlike any other. It's not for you to die and meet your fate in the stallion land of Argos. No, the deathless ones will sweep you off to the world's end, the Elysian fields, where gold-haired Rhadamanthys waits, where life glides on in immortal ease for mortal man. No snow, no winter onslaught, never a downpour there, but night and day the ocean river sends up breezes, singing winds of the west refreshing all mankind. All this because you are Helen's husband now. The gods count you the son-in-law of Zeus. Menelaus tells Telemachus that he would give him gifts, 3 horses and a well-finished chariot, a fine goblet for libations. But the young man refuses the horses, knowing that Ithaca is a rocky island unfit for them. I will not take the horses to Ithaca, but will leave them here, for your own delight, since you are lord of a spreading plain. The gift Menelaus finally gives is a mixing bowl of silver, edged with gold, the work of Hephaestus, given by Phidemos, king of the Sidonians, who sheltered Menelaus on his way home. Meanwhile, back in Ithaca, Penelope learns of her son's departure. A cloud of heart-wasting sorrow is on her, and she sinks to the floor of her bedchamber weeping. Hear me, dear friends. The Olympian has given me sorrows beyond all others who were born and brought up together with me. For first, I lost a husband with the heart of a lion and great, whose fame goes wide through Hellas and midmost Argos. And now again the storm winds have caught away my beloved son, without trace, from halls. The dream comes to comfort her, a vision in the form of Iphthyme, her sister, who tells her, Take courage, let not your heart be too altogether frightened, for such an escort goes along with him, and one that other men would have prayed to have standing beside them. For she has power, Pallas Athene, and she has pity on you in your grieving. But the suitors are not idle. Antinous and Eurymachos plot to ambush Telemachos on his return, stationing 20 men at Asteris, the rocky island in the channel between Ithaca and Samos. The trap is set, and the young prince sails home into danger. Quote, "In my time I have studied the wit and counsel of many men who were heroes, and I have been over much of the world, yet nowhere have I seen with my own eyes anyone like him, nor known an inward heart like the heart of enduring Odysseus." Quote, "I saw him once on an island, weeping live warm tears in the nymph Calypso's house. She holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his own native land, no trim ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back." Book 5. Now Dawn rose from her bed, where she lay by haughty Tithonus, carrying light to the immortal gods and to mortals, and the gods came and took their places in session, and among them Zeus who thunders on high. And Athene spoke to them of the many cares of Odysseus, remembering. Though he was in the nymph's house, she still thought of him. Father Zeus and all other blessed gods everlasting, no longer now let one who is a sceptered king be eager to be gentle and kind, be one whose thought is schooled in justice. But let him always rather be harsh and act severely, seeing the way no one of the people he was lord over remembers godlike Odysseus. And he was kind, like a father. The speech is a provocation. Athene speaks as if Odysseus has been forgotten, knowing that Zeus will respond with a reminder that the plan is already in motion. Zeus answers, "My child, what sort of word has escaped your teeth's barrier? For is not this your own intention, as you have counseled it, how Odysseus shall make his way back and punish those others?" The exchange reveals the divine machinery at work. Athene plays the role of the worried advocate, Zeus the patient architect. Zeus sends Hermes to Calypso with the decree. Odysseus must be released. The messenger god arrives on the island and finds Calypso in her cavern, weaving at her loom. She answers him with a speech that carries the bitterness of a goddess who has been denied the one thing she wanted. All you gods who live at your ease were full of resentment, until chaste Artemis of the golden throne in Ortygia came with a visitation of painless arrows and killed him. So now, you gods, you resented in me that I keep beside me a man, the one I saved when he clung astride of the keel board all alone, since Zeus with a cast of the shining thunderbolt had shattered his fast ship midway on the wine-blue water. The complaint is both a defense and an accusation. The gods deny her what they themselves have taken from mortals. Calypso finds Odysseus sitting on the seashore, his eyes never wiped dry of tears, the sweet lifetime draining out of him as he wept for a way home. By nights he would lie beside her, of necessity, but all the days he would sit upon the rocks at the seaside, breaking his heart in tears and lamentation and sorrow, as weeping tears he looked out over the barren water. The image is devastating. A man trapped between desire and duty, between the nymph who offers immortality and the wife who offers home. Calypso tells him he is free to go. Odysseus, suspicious, demands an oath that she will not plot against him. She swears by earth, sky, and the Styx, and then she gives him tools, bronze and auger, and timber to build a raft. For 4 days he works, and on the 5th day Calypso sees him off with food, wine, and a following wind. He sails for 17 days, keeping the bear on his left hand, and on the 18th day the shadowy mountains of the Phaeacians appear. But Poseidon sees him from the mountains of the Solymi. The earth-shaker drives on a great wave, terrible and rough, that curls over and breaks down upon him, scattering the raft's timbers like chaff in the wind. Odysseus strips off the clothing Calypso gave him, ties the veil of Ino around his chest, and throws himself into the water. Pity me then, my lord. I call myself your suppliant. The river god stays his current and lets Odysseus get safely to shore. Athene calms the storm winds and stirs a north wind to carry him to the Phaeacians. He clings to the wreckage for 2 nights and 2 days. And on the third morning he sees the land lying close. He hears the sound of a river flowing into the sea, and he prays to the river, "Pity me, Lord, to whom I come as suppliant." The river answers, and Odysseus staggers from the water, kisses the grain-giving soil, and hides himself in a bed of fallen leaves beneath two bushes, one of shrub, one of wild olive, where the wind cannot penetrate and the rain cannot pass through. Athene sheds a sleep on his eyes, and the man who has suffered so much finally rests. Quote, "By nights he would lie beside her, of necessity, but all the days he would sit upon the rocks at the seaside, breaking his heart in tears and lamentation and sorrow, as weeping tears he looked out over the barren water." Quote, "Pity me, my lord. I call myself your suppliant." Book 6. So long-suffering great Odysseus slept in that place in an exhaustion of sleep and weariness, and now Athene went her way to the district and city of the Phaeacian men, who formerly lived in the spacious land, Hypereia, and next to the Cyclopes, who were men too overbearing, and who had kept harrying them, being greater in strength. From here godlike Nausithous had removed and led a migration, and settled in Scheria, far away from men who eat bread, and driven a wall about the city, and built the houses, and made the temples of the gods, and allotted the holdings. But now he had submitted to his fate, and gone to Hades, and Alcinous, learned in designs from the gods, now ruled there. It was to his house that the gray-eyed goddess Athene went, devising the homecoming of great-hearted Odysseus, and she went into the ornate chamber, in which a girl was sleeping, like the immortal goddesses for stature and beauty, Nausicaa, the daughter of great-hearted Alcinous. Athene drifted in like a breath of wind to where the girl slept, and came and stood above her head and spoke a word to her, likening herself to the daughter of Dymas, famed for seafaring, a girl of the same age, in whom her fancy delighted. "Nausicaa, how could your mother have a child so careless? The shining clothes are lying away uncared for, while your marriage is not far off, when you should be in your glory for clothes to wear, and provide too for those who attend you. It is from such things that a good reputation among people springs up, giving pleasure to your father and the lady of the Phaeacians hereabouts." The dream is a masterstroke of divine manipulation. Athene does not command but suggests, planting the desire in the girl's mind as if it were her own. Nausicaa wakes and goes to her father, asking for the mule wagon to carry the clothes to the river. Alcinous grants it, and Nausicaa and her maids drive to the washing place. They bathe, anoint themselves with olive oil, eat their dinner along the banks, and then throw off their veils for a game of ball. The ball goes into the swirling water, and the girls cry out aloud. Odysseus wakes at the sound and ponders. "Ah me, where are the people whose land I've come to this time? And are they violent and savage, and without justice, or hospitable to strangers, with a godly mind?" He breaks off a leafy branch to cover his nakedness, and comes out of the thicket, terrible to look upon, all crusted, caked with brine. The girls scatter in panic down the jutting beaches. Only Nausicaa holds fast, for Athene planted courage within her heart and dissolved the trembling in her limbs. Odysseus approaches with a speech that is both supplication and courtship. "Here I am at your mercy. Princess, are you a goddess or a mortal? If one of the gods who rule the skies up there, you're Artemis to the life, the daughter of mighty Zeus. I see her now. Just look at her build, your bearing, your lithe flowing grace. But if you're one of the mortals living here on earth, 3 times blessed are your father, your queenly mother, 3 times over your brothers too. How often their hearts must warm with joy to see you striding into the dances, such a bloom of beauty. True, but he is the one more blessed than all other men alive, that man who sways you with gifts and leads you home, his bride. I have never laid eyes on anyone like you, neither man nor woman. I look at you, and a sense of wonder takes me." The speech is calculated to flatter without presuming. Odysseus knows he is a naked, salt-crusted stranger, and he offers Nausicaa the gift of admiration without asking for anything in return. She gives him food and clothing, and tells him to wait in the grove of Athene until the palace is in sight. When you have disappeared inside the house in the courtyard, then go on quickly across the hall until you come my mother, and she will be sitting beside the hearth, turning sea-purple yarn on a distaff, a wonder to look at. Go on past her, and then with your arms embrace our mother's knees. Do this, so as to behold your day of homecoming with happiness and speed. Athene then makes Odysseus taller, thicker, and arranges the curling locks that hang down like hyacinthine petals. And as when a master craftsman overlays gold on silver, and he is one who was taught by Hephaestus and Pallas Athene in art complete, and grace is on every work he finishes, so Athene gilded with grace his head and his shoulders. The transformation is not mere beauty, but the radiance of divine favor. Odysseus becomes, for a moment, what he was always meant to be. Nausicaa's handmaids recognize the change. Surely he is not one of the men who live in this country. He is from somewhere else. What god lives on Olympus has made him so. The girl herself says only, "It is not against the will of all the gods on Olympus that this man is here to be made known to the godlike Phaeacians. A while ago he seemed an unpromising man to me. Now he even resembles one of the gods, who hold high heaven." Odysseus waits in the grove and prays to Athene. "Hear me, Atratone, child of Zeus of the Aegis, and listen to me now, since before you did not listen to my stricken voice as the famous shaker of the earth battered me. Grant that I come, as one loved and pitied, among the Phaeacians." The prayer is brief and precise. Odysseus knows what he needs and asks for nothing more. Quote, "I have never laid eyes on anyone like you, neither man nor woman. I look at you, and a sense of wonder takes me." Quote, "It is not against the will of all the gods on Olympus that this man is here to be made known to the godlike Phaeacians. A while ago he seemed an unpromising man to me. Now he even resembles one of the gods, who hold high heaven." Book 7. So long-suffering great Odysseus prayed in that place. But the strength of the mules carried the young girl on to the city, and when she had arrived at the glorious house of her father, she stopped in the forecourt. And there her brothers came and stood, men like immortal gods. They unyoked the mules and carried the laundry inside, and she went in her chamber. Odysseus rose to go to the city. Athene, with kind thought for Odysseus, drifted a deep mist about him, for fear some one of the great-hearted Phaeacians, meeting him, might speak to him in a sneering way and ask where he came from. But when he was about to enter the lovely city, there the gray-eyed goddess Athene met him, in the likeness of a young girl, carrying a pitcher. "My child, would you not show me the way to the house of a certain man, Alcinous, who is lord over all these people? For I am an unhappy stranger, and I have come here a long way from a distant land, and I know nobody here." Athene answers, "Then, my friend and father, I will show you the house that you asked me to show, since the king lives close beside my own stately father. But go on in silence the while I lead the way for you, and do not give any of these people your eye, neither ask them questions, for they do not have very much patience with men from the outlands, nor do they lovingly entertain the man come from elsewhere. They, confident in the speed of their running ships, cross over the broad back of the sea, and they are the blessed immortals near of kin. The warning is both practical and revealing. The Phaeacians are powerful, but insular, their ships the fastest in the world, gifts of Poseidon himself. Odysseus marvels at the palace as he approaches. The bronze walls, the golden statues of young men with blazing torches, the garden with its pear trees and pomegranate trees and apple trees with their shining fruit, the sweet fig trees and the flourishing olive. Never is the fruit spoiled on these. Never does it give out, neither in wintertime nor summer, but always the west wind blowing on the fruits brings some to ripeness while he starts others. The description is a catalogue of divine abundance. The palace is not merely wealthy but blessed, a place where the gods themselves have set their seal. He enters and finds the leaders of the Phaeacians pouring libation to Hermes, the god of travelers. He goes on through the house, and all the men are struck silent by his presence. Then he flings himself at Arate's knees and clasps her in supplication. "Arate, daughter of Rhexenor, son of Eunor, I come as a suppliant to your husband, and to your knees after much suffering. And may the gods give you a happy life, for I pray that you may reach your goal the day of your homecoming. The old man Echeneus, eldest of the Phaeacians, breaks the silence. Alcinous, this is not the way. The stranger is on the ground, in the ashes by the fire. Raise him up and seat the stranger in a silver-studded chair, and tell the heralds to mix more wine for all, so we can pour out cups to Zeus who loves the lightning, champion of suppliants. Alcinous raises Odysseus and seats him in a burnished chair. The housekeeper brings bread and appetizers, and the wine is poured. Then Aerate speaks, recognizing the clothing, a mantle and tunic she herself had made with her serving women. Stranger and friend, I myself first have a question to ask you. What man are you, and whence? And who is it gave you this clothing? Odysseus tells his story. Calypso's island, the shipwreck, the river god who saved him, Nausicaa who gave him clothing. He tells it with the precision of a man who has rehearsed his tale for the moment when he would need it. Alcinous listens and offers passage home. Father Zeus, Athene, and Apollo, how I wish that, being the man you are and thinking the way that I do, you could have my daughter and be called my son-in-law, staying here with me. I would dower you with a house and properties, if you stayed by your own goodwill. Against that, no Phaeacian shall detain you. The offer is genuine, but Odysseus refuses. His heart is set on home. A bed is made for him in the porch, with fine underbedding of purple and blankets above it. He lies down and sleeps, and for a moment the long-suffering man knows peace. Quote, I am an unhappy stranger, and I have come here a long way from a distant land, and I know nobody here of the people who keep this city and the fields about it. Quote, Father Zeus, may Alcinous accomplish everything of which he spoke, and so may he have imperishable glory upon the grain-giving earth. And I come home to my country. Book 8. Then when the young dawn showed again with her rosy fingers, Alcinous, the hallowed prince, rose up from his sleeping, and the descendant of Zeus, Odysseus, sacker of cities, rose up, and Alcinous, the hallowed prince, guided them to the Phaeacians' place of assembly, which was built for them by the ships. They went and took their seats on the polished stones together. But Pallas Athene went through the city, likening herself to the herald of wise Alcinous, as she was devising the return of great-hearted Odysseus. Alcinous calls the assembly and proposes to send the stranger home. Here is this stranger. I do not know who he is, come wandering suppliant here to my house from the eastern or western people. So let us, as we have done before, hasten to convey him, for neither has any other man who has come to my house stayed here grieving a long time for the matter of convoy. The proposal is carried, and the Phaeacians prepare the ship and the feast. The inspired singer Demodocus is summoned, for to him the god gave songs surpassing singing. Demodocus sings first of the love of Ares and Aphrodite, how they lay together in the house of Hephaestus, how the glorious smith set his treacherous snare of fastenings too thin for even the blessed gods to see, and how Helios, the sun, saw them and told Hephaestus. The story is both comic and divine. The gods suffer the same passions as mortals, and their betrayals are made public by the same mechanisms of gossip and shame. The Phaeacians listen and laugh, and the song lifts the mood of the assembly. Then come the games. The young men compete in wrestling, boxing, and running, and Laodamas, the son of Alcinous, challenges Odysseus. Come you also now, father stranger, and try these contests if you have skill in any. It beseems you to know athletics, for there is no greater glory that can befall a man living than what he achieves by speed of his feet or strength of his hands. Odysseus declines, saying cares are more in his mind than games. But Euryalus insults him. No, stranger, for I do not see that you are like one versed in contests, such as now are practiced much among people, but rather to one who plies his ways in his many-locked vessel, master over mariners who also are men of business. The insult stings, and Odysseus rises. He throws the discus farther than any Phaeacian has ever thrown, and the stone flies past all the marks. Even a blind man, friend, could find your mark by groping round. It's not mixed up in the crowd, it's far in front. Athene marks the spot and cries out in triumph. Then Odysseus challenges all Phaeacia's best. Now go match that, you young pups, and straightway I'll hurl you another just as far or farther still. The young men are silent. They know they cannot match him. Euryalus, recognizing his fault, comes to Odysseus and offers a gift, a sword of bronze with a silver hilt and ivory sheath. Stranger, be glad at heart. Father Zeus, Athene, and Apollo, how I wish that, being the man you are and thinking the way that I do, you could have my daughter and be called my son-in-law, staying here with me. The apology is gracious, and Odysseus accepts it. Then Demodocus sings the song that breaks Odysseus open, the story of the Trojan horse. He sings how the Trojans sat around the wooden horse and talked endlessly, and 3 ways of thought found favor. Either to take the pitiless bronze to it and hack open the hollow horse, or drag it to the cliff's edge and topple it over, or let it stand where it was as a dedication to blandish the gods. And this last way was to be the end of it, seeing that the city was destined to be destroyed when it had inside it the great horse made of wood, with all the best of Argives sitting within and bearing death and doom for the Trojans. The song continues. The sons of the Achaeans left their hollow hiding place and sacked the city, and Odysseus went with godlike Menelaus to find the house of Deiphobos, where he endured the grimmest fighting that ever he had, but won it there too with great-hearted Athene aiding. So the famous singer sang his tale, but Odysseus melted, and from under his eyes the tears ran down, drenching his cheeks. As a woman weeps, lying over the body of her dear husband, who fell fighting for her city and people as he tried to beat off the pitiless day from city and children. She sees him dying and gasping for breath, and winding her body about him, she cries high and shrill. Alcinous alone understands. He asks the singer to stop and turns to Odysseus. Tell me the name by which your mother and father called you in that place, and how the rest who live in the city about you call you. No one among all the peoples, neither base man nor noble, is altogether nameless, once he has been born. The question is the invitation to the great story, the story of Odysseus's wanderings that will fill the next 4 books. Quote, so the famous singer sang his tale, but Odysseus melted, and from under his eyes the tears ran down, drenching his cheeks. Quote, no one among all the peoples, neither base man nor noble, is altogether nameless, once he has been born, but always his parents, as soon as they bring him forth, put upon him a name. Book 9. Then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn and answered him. O great Alcinous, preeminent among all people, surely indeed it is a good thing to listen to a singer such as this one before us, who is like the gods in his singing. For I think there is no occasion accomplished that is more pleasant than when festivity holds sway among all the populace, and the feasters up and down the houses are sitting in order and listening to the singer. And beside them the tables are loaded with bread and meats. And from a mixing bowl the wine steward draws the wine and carries it about and fills the cups. This seems to my own mind to be the best of occasions. The opening is a bridge from the music of Demodocus to the story Odysseus is about to tell. He names himself, am Odysseus son of Laertes, known before all men for the study of crafty designs, and my fame goes up to the heavens. He describes Ithaca, the rugged island, the mountain Neritos, and declares the principle that governs the entire poem. Nothing is more sweet in the end than country and parents, ever, even when far away one lives in a fertile place, when it is an alien country, far from his parents. Then the story begins. After the fall of Troy, Odysseus and his men sail to the land of the Cyclopes, a wild and lawless place where men do not plant or plow, but live on cheese and milk and the flesh of untracked goats. Odysseus takes 12 men and enters the cave of Polyphemus, a cyclops of terrible strength, one-eyed and savage. The cave is filled with cheeses and pens of lambs and kids, and the men beg Odysseus to take the cheeses and flee. But Odysseus waits. He wants to see the giant and receive a guest gift. Polyphemus returns, drives his flocks inside, and rolls a massive boulder, so heavy that 22 wagons could not budge it, across the cave's mouth. He sees the strangers and asks, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" Odysseus answers with craft, "We are Achaeans, blown off course, and we come as suppliants to your knees, if you might give us a guest present or otherwise some gift of grace, for such is the right of strangers. Therefore respect the gods, O best of men. We are your suppliants, and Zeus the guest god, who stands behind all strangers with honors due them, avenges any wrong towards strangers and suppliants." Polyphemus answers with pitiless contempt, "Stranger, you are a simple fool, or come from far off, when you tell me to avoid the wrath of the gods or fear them. The Cyclopes do not concern themselves over Zeus of the Aegis, nor any of the rest of the blessed gods, since we are far better than they." He seizes 2 of Odysseus's men and devours them, like killing puppies, and the rest cower in terror. Each night Polyphemus eats 2 more. Then Odysseus devises the stratagem. He gives Polyphemus strong, unmixed wine, and the giant drinks deeply, asking for more. "Tell me your name," Polyphemus demands, "and I will give you a guest gift." Odysseus answers, "My name is Nobody, mother, father, and friends. Everyone calls me Nobody." The giant, drunk and drowsy, vomits the flesh of the men he has eaten and falls asleep. Odysseus and his men heat a stake of olive wood in the fire and drive it into Polyphemus's single eye. The giant roars, and the other Cyclopes gather outside the cave, asking what ails him. Polyphemus answers, "Nobody is killing me by force or treachery." They reply, "If alone as you are none uses violence on you, why, there is no avoiding the sickness sent by great Zeus." They go away, and Odysseus laughs over how his name and his perfect planning have fooled them all. In the morning, Polyphemus rolls back the boulder to let his flocks out, sitting in the doorway and feeling for any man who tries to escape among the sheep. Odysseus lashes his men under the bellies of 3 rams each, and he himself clings to the belly of the finest ram in the flock. When Polyphemus lets the rams pass, he does not feel the men hidden beneath them. Odysseus and his men run to the ship and cast off. From the ship, Odysseus calls back, "Cyclops, if any mortal man ever asks how you came by your blindness, say that Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, who makes his home in Ithaca, blinded you." The taunt is a magnificent error. Odysseus's pride, his need to be known, will bring Poseidon's wrath upon him. Polyphemus prays to his father Poseidon, "Hear me, Poseidon who circle the earth, dark-haired. If truly I am your son, and you acknowledge yourself as my father, grant that Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, who makes his home in Ithaca, may never reach that home. But if it is decided that he shall see his own people and come home to his strong-founded house and to his own country, let him come late, in bad case, with the loss of all his companions, in someone else's ship, and find troubles in his household." Poseidon hears, and the curse will shape the rest of the poem. Quote, "Nothing is more sweet in the end than country and parents. Ever, even when far away one lives in a fertile place, when it is an alien country, far from his parents." Quote, "The Cyclopes do not concern themselves over Zeus of the Aegis, nor any of the rest of the blessed gods, since we are far better than they." Book 10. We came next to the Aeolian island, where Aiolos lived, Hippota's son, beloved by the immortal gods, on a floating island, the whole enclosed by a rampart of bronze, not to be broken, and the sheer of the cliff runs upward to it. And 12 children were born to him in his palace, 6 of them daughters, and 6 sons in the pride of their youth. So he bestowed his daughters on his sons to be their consorts. And evermore, beside their dear father and gracious mother, these feast and good things beyond number are set before them. And all their days the house fragrant with food echoes in the courtyard, but their nights they sleep each one by his modest wife, under coverlets, and on bedsteads corded for bedding. A whole month he entertained Odysseus, and asked him everything of Ilion, and the ships of the Argives, and the Achaeans' homecoming. When Odysseus asked for passage, Aiolos granted it. He gave him a bag made of the skin taken off a 9-year ox, stuffed full inside with the courses of all the blowing winds, for the son of Kronos had set him in charge over the winds, to hold them still or start them up at his pleasure. He stowed it away in the hollow ship, tied fast with a silver string, so there should be no wrong breath of wind, and set the west wind free to blow him home. For 9 days they sail, and on the 10th the land of the Achaeans appears. They can see people tending fires. They are very close to home. But the sweet sleep comes upon Odysseus, for he was worn out with always handling the sheet himself, and his companions open the bag, thinking it holds silver and gold. The winds rush out and drive them back to the island of Iolos. The old man refuses to help them again. O least of living creatures, out of this island. Hurry, I have no right to see on his way, none to give passage to any man whom the blessed gods hate with such bitterness. Out. This arrival means you are hateful to the immortals. Then they come to the land of the Laestrygonians at Telepylos, where the courses of night and day lie close together. They enter a harbor enclosed by sky-towering cliffs on either side, with no break anywhere. The harbor is calm, with never a swell of surf. Odysseus keeps his ship on the outside, at the very end, making her fast to the cliff with a cable. He sends 3 men to find out what people live in this country. They meet the powerful daughter of the Laestrygonian king Antiphates, who leads them to her father's house. He eats one of the men, and the queen raises the cry through the city. The Laestrygonians come swarming up from every direction, tens of thousands of them, and not like men, like giants. These, standing along the cliffs, pelt the ships with man-sized boulders. They speared them like fish and carried them away for their joyless feasting. Only Odysseus and his crew on the one remaining ship escape, having cut the cable at the first sound of destruction. They come next to the island of A, where Circe of the lovely hair lies, the dread goddess who talks with mortals, own sister to the malignant-minded Aeates, both children of Helios who shines on mortals. They lie there for 2 days, sorrow and weariness eating their hearts out. On the 3rd day, Odysseus climbs to a rocky point and sees smoke going up from wide-wayed earth through undergrowth and forest. He sends 2 men and a herald to find out what people live there. They come to the palace of Circe, built of dressed stone on a cleared rise of land. Mountain wolves and lions roam the grounds. She has bewitched them herself. She gave them magic drugs. The men enter, and Circe gives them a potion of cheese, barley, and pale honey-mulled and Pramnian wine. When they drink it, she strikes them with her wand, and they become pigs, swine's heads, bristles, and grunting voices, but their minds remain unchanged. Only Eurylochus stays behind and tells Odysseus what has happened. Odysseus goes to the palace, and Hermes meets him on the way, giving him the herb moly. Its root is black and its flower white as milk, and the gods call it moly. Dangerous for a mortal man to pluck from the soil, but not for deathless gods. All lies within their power. With this protection, Odysseus confronts Circe, draws his sword, and forces her to swear an oath that she will not harm him. She gives him back his companions, and they live with her for a year, feasting on unlimited meat and sweet wine. But when the year is done, the men grow restless. Eurylochus speaks for them. Dear friends, we've been senseless, ruinous. All this time we've been squandered, wasting our lives away, far from the native land we love. Come, why not board the black ship and sail at once? Circe tells Odysseus he must first go to the underworld to consult the prophet Tiresias, who will tell him the way back to Ithaca. She gives him precise instructions. Beach the ship at the edge of ocean, dig a pit of about a cubit in each direction, pour drink offerings for the dead, honey mixed with milk, then sweet wine, then water, and over all sprinkle white barley, and sacrifice a ram and a black female, turning them toward Erebos while he turns away. The souls of the dead will come, but he must not let them draw near the blood until Tiresias has spoken. On the morning of departure, Elpenor, the youngest of the crew, not terribly powerful in fighting nor sound his thoughts, falls from the roof of Circe's palace and breaks his neck. His soul goes down to Hades. The death is accidental and pitiful, a young man drunk and careless, killed by his own recklessness. Odysseus tells the crew, "You think you're on your way back now to your own beloved country, but Circe has indicated another journey for us, to the house of Hades and of revered Persephone, there to consult with the soul of Tiresias the Theban." They sit down on the ground and lament and tear their hair out. Quote, "We have been senseless, ruinous. All this time we've been squandered, wasting our lives away, far from the native land we love." Quote, "The gods call it moly. It is hard for mortal men to dig up, but the gods have power to do all things." Book 11. When they had gone down again to the sea in their vessel, first of all they dragged the ship down into the bright water, and in the black hole set the mast in place, and set sails, and took the sheep and walked them aboard. Circe of the lovely hair sent them an excellent companion, a following wind, filling the sails, to carry from astern the ship with the dark prow. They made the limit, which is of the deep-running ocean. There lie the community and city of Cimmerian people, hidden in fog and cloud, nor does Helios, the radiant sun, ever break through the dark to illuminate them with his shining, neither when he climbs up into the starry heaven, nor when he wheels to return again from heaven to earth, but always a glum night is spread over wretched mortals. They ran the ship ashore, took out the sheep, and walked along by the stream of the ocean until they came to that place to which Circe had spoken. Odysseus digs a pit of about a cubit in each direction and pours in the drink offerings. First honey mixed with milk, then sweet wine, then water, and over it all he sprinkles white barley. He cuts the throats of the sheep over the pit, and the dark clouding blood runs in, and the souls of the perished dead gather to the place. Up out of Erebos, brides and young unmarried men, and long-suffering elders, virgins tender and with the sorrows of young hearts upon them, and many, many more, men wounded with the bronze spear, men who had borne the bloody rags of men who died in battle, coming in throngs from every direction about the pit, with an inhuman clamor. First comes Elpenor, unburied, and he begs Odysseus to return to Circe's island and give him proper rights. Then comes Odysseus's mother Anticlea, who died of grief waiting for her son. She tells him of his father Laertes, who lies in the country, old and broken, barely eating, sleeping in the dirt next to the fire with foul clothing upon him. Of Penelope, all too much with enduring heart, she does wait for you there in your own palace, and always with her the wretched nights, and the days also waste her away with weeping. Of Telemachos, no one yet holds your fine inheritance, but in freedom Telemachos administers your allotted lands. Then comes Tiresias, the blind prophet, who drinks the blood and knows Odysseus at once. He gives the prophecy that will shape the rest of the journey. First you will raise the island of the Sirens, those creatures who spellbind any man alive, whoever comes their way. Then you will face the choice between Scylla and Charybdis. And if you damage the cattle of Helios on Thrinacia, then destruction will come for your ship and your companions. Of his return, Tiresias says, "You will come to your country and find the suitors devouring your substance. You must kill them all, with cunning, not by open force. Then you must take in oar and walk inland, far from the sea, until you find people who know nothing of the sea, who have never seen a ship with its oars. Those are the people to whom you must show the oar, and there you must sacrifice to Poseidon. Then at last you will come home, and you will find your wife waiting for you, and your son, and your father." Then come the shades of the great heroes. Agamemnon tells the story of his murder. Aegisthus lured him to a feast and cut him down as a man cuts down some ox at the trough, and none of his men were left alive. He warns Odysseus, "When you bring your ship into your own dear country, put away in your heart this other thing that I tell you. Do it secretly, not in the open. There is no trusting in women." Then comes Achilles, who knew Odysseus in life, and greets him with a flight of mournful questions. Son of Laertes and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, hard man, what made you think of this bigger endeavor? How could you endure to come down here to Hades' place, where the senseless dead men dwell, mere imitations of perished mortals? Odysseus tries to console him. No man before has been more blessed than you, nor ever will be. Before, when you were alive, we Argives honored you as we did the gods, and now in this place you have great authority over the dead. Do not grieve, even in death, Achilles. But Achilles answers with the most devastating words in the poem, O shining Odysseus, never try to console me for dying. I would rather follow the plow as thrall to another man, one with no land allotted him and not much to live on, than rule down here over all the breathless dead. The words overturn everything the heroic world has promised, glory, honor, immortality through song, and replace it with a simple truth. Life is better than death, even the poorest life. Then comes Ajax, who refuses to speak, turning away in silence. The memory of the quarrel over Achilles' armor still burning in the dead man's heart. And Odysseus sees the great sinners, Tantalos, standing in lake water that comes to his chin, but never able to drink, Sisyphos, pushing a monstrous stone up a hill only to have it roll back again, and Heracles, his image there while he himself among the immortal gods enjoys the festivals, married to sweet-stepping Hebe. The book ends with Odysseus fleeing the hordes of the dead in terror, running back to the ship, and casting off into the ocean stream. Quote, I would rather follow the plow as thrall to another man, one with no land allotted him and not much to live on, than rule down here over all the breathless dead. Quote, do it secretly, not in the open. There is no trusting in women. Book 12. When they had returned to Circe's island, they buried Elpenor, piling the grave mound and planting the well-shaped or in the very top. Then Circe came, and her attendants following carried bread and many meats and the shining red wine. Unhappy men, who went alive to the house of Hades, so dying twice, when all the rest of mankind die only once. Come then eat what there is and drink your wine, staying here all the rest of the day. And then tomorrow, when dawn shows, you shall sail, and I will show you the way and make plain all details. That night she gave Odysseus the full instructions for the journey home. First the sirens, whoever draws too close, off guard, and catches the sirens' voices in the air. No sailing home for him, no wife rising to meet him, no happy children beaming up at their father's face. The high, thrilling song of the sirens will transfix him, lolling there in their meadow, round them heaps of corpses rotting away, rags of skin shriveling on their bones. She tells Odysseus to plug his companion's ears with beeswax, but if he is bent on hearing, to have them tie him hand and foot to the mast. Then Scylla and Charybdis. On one side, beetling cliffs shoot up, and against them pound the huge roaring breakers. The clashing rocks they're called. No ship of men has ever approached and slipped past. On the other side loom two enormous crags. In one is Charybdis, who sucks the sea's salt water down and vomits it up again. And she tells him to choose the nearer course, past Scylla. Better by far to lose 6 men and keep your ship than lose your entire crew. Then the island of Thrinacia, where the cattle of Helios are pastured. If you keep your mind on homecoming and leave these unharmed, you might all make your way to Ithaca after much suffering. But if you do harm them, then I testify to the destruction of your ship and your companions. They sail and come first to the sirens. Odysseus plugs his men's ears with beeswax and has them tie him to the mast. When the sirens sing, he struggles to break free, straining against the ropes, begging his men to release them. But they tighten the lashings, and when they are safely past, they remove the beeswax from their ears. Then they come to the strait between Scylla and Charybdis. Odysseus takes up a position at the helm, and Scylla snatches 6 of his companions, the best of them for strength and hands work. I saw their feet and hands from below, already lifted high above me, and they cried out to me and called me by name, the last time they ever did it in heart sorrow. The image is the most terrible in the poem, men lifted into the air, reaching back toward their captain, and then devoured. That was the most pitiful scene that these eyes have looked on in my sufferings as I explored the routes over the water. They come to Thrinacia. Odysseus hears the lowing of the cattle and begs his men to sail on, but they are weary and hungry and refuse. While Odysseus sleeps, they sacrifice and eat the cattle of Helios. When Odysseus wakes, the pleasant savor of cooking meat drifts around him, and he cries out, "Father Zeus, and you other everlasting and blessed gods, with a pitiless sleep you lulled me. To my confusion, and my companion staying here dared a deed that was monstrous." Lampetia, the nymph who guards the cattle, runs to tell her father. Helios is angry. "Father Zeus, punish the companions of Odysseus, son of Laertes, for they outrageously killed my cattle, in whom I always delighted, on my way up into the starry heaven, or when I turned back again from heaven toward earth. Unless these are made to give me just recompense for my cattle, I will go down to Hades and give my light to the dead men." Zeus answers, "Helios, shine on as you do. For my part, one will strike these men's fast ship midway on the open wine-blue sea with a shining bolt and dash it to pieces." For 6 days the men feast on the cattle. On the 7th, they sail, and Zeus hurls the thunderbolt. The mast snaps, the steersman's head is crushed, and the men are thrown into the water, bobbing like sea crows. Only Odysseus survives, clinging to the keel. He is carried back to Charybdis, catches hold of a fig tree, and waits for the wreckage to emerge. When it does, he drops onto the keel and paddles away with his hands. For 9 days the storm carries him, and on the 10th night the gods bring him to the island of Ogygia, home of Calypso with the lovely hair, who takes care of him. The story has come full circle. Odysseus is back where he began, at the beginning of the poem, and now he will tell the Phaeacians how he came to their shore. Quote, "Better by far to lose 6 men and keep your ship than lose your entire crew." Quote, "That was the most pitiful scene that these eyes have looked on in my sufferings as I explored the routes over the water." Book 13. So Odysseus spoke, and all of them stayed, stricken to silence, held in thrall by the story all through the shadowy chambers. Then Alcinous answered him, "Odysseus, now that you have come to my house, bronze founded with a high roof, I think you will not lose your homecoming, nor be driven back from it again for all your sufferings." He lays a charge upon the Phaeacian princes. Each man is to give a great tripod and a cauldron, and they will make it good by a collection among the people. It is hard for a single man to be generous. The next morning the Phaeacians bring the gifts to the ship, bronze, gold, and woven clothing, and Alcinous himself stows them well away under the thwarts so they will not hamper the crew. Odysseus watches the sun, eager for its going down, as a man makes for his dinner, when all day long his wine-colored oxen have dragged the compact plow for him across the field, and the sun setting is welcome for bringing the time to go to his dinner. And as he goes his knees fail him. Thus welcome to Odysseus now was the sun going under. He drinks one last cup to the blessed gods who hold wide heaven, and says, "Farewell, all of you, lords of the Phaeacians, and yourselves farewell, for all my heart desired is now accomplished." They row him through the night, and Poseidon, still angry, turns the Phaeacian ship to stone. Surging close abreast, the earthquake god with one flat stroke of his hand struck her stone, rooted her to the ocean floor, and made for open sea. Alcinous sees the portent and remembers his father's prophecy. Poseidon would be angry with the Phaeacians for convoying men without hurt, and would one day stun their ship and pile a great mountain round about their port. Odysseus wakes on the shore of Ithaca, not knowing where he is. Athene has poured a mist about him, hiding the true shape of the land. He strikes the ground with his fist and cries out, "Ah me, into what country have I come now? Are they violent and savage, and without justice, or hospitable to strangers, with a godly mind? And where have I put my treasures? Where have they gone? They have not stayed in the ship, as they should have. I must have been made the target of some god, or have lost my wits." He wanders the shore, looking for some sign of the land he knew as a boy. Then Athene appears, in the likeness of a young shepherd, and Odysseus approaches her with his usual craft, weaving a story about being an exile from Crete who has killed the son of Idomeneus and fled. The lie is elaborate and precise. He gives the name of his father, the city he comes from, the details of his supposed voyage, and it is the same kind of story he has told at every port, the story that has kept him alive for 10 years. Athene smiles and reveals herself. No man is better than you at weaving lies and deceptions. You are beyond all others in your craft and cunning. But we too are both accomplished in the arts, for you are by far the best of all mortal men in counsel and storytelling, and I among all the gods am famous for wisdom and cunning wiles. You never recognized me, did you? Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, who always stands beside you, shields you in every exploit. Thanks to me, the Phaeacians all embraced you warmly. And now I am here once more, to weave a scheme with you and to hide the treasure trove Phaeacia's nobles lavished on you. She scatters the mist, and Odysseus sees his own country. He kisses the grain-giving ground and prays to the nymphs who live in the cave. Then Athene hides his treasures in the cave and tells him the plan. He must go to the swineherd Eumaeus, who is loyal to Penelope and Telemachus, while she goes to Sparta to fetch Telemachus home. She tells him of the suitors. They plot to kill Telemachus on his return, but she says this will not happen. Sooner will the earth cover some one of those suitors who are eating away his substance. Then she disguises Odysseus as an old man, withering the handsome flesh on his limbs, ruining the brown hair on his head, putting upon him the cloud of cloth and the ugly wallet. The man who was once the handsomest of all the Achaeans becomes a figure of contempt, a beggar that no one would look twice at. The disguise is the final stage of Odysseus's transformation. He has been a king, a beggar, a lover of goddesses, and now he will be the old man who nobody recognizes until it is too late. Quote, "No man is better than you at weaving lies and deceptions. You are beyond all others in your craft and cunning. But we too are both accomplished in the arts, for you are by far the best of all mortal men in counsel and storytelling, and I among all the gods am famous for wisdom and cunning wiles." Quote, "Thus welcome to Odysseus now was the sun going under." Book 14. But Odysseus himself left the harbor and ascended a rugged path through wooded country along the heights, where Athene had indicated the noble swineherd, who beyond others cared for the house properties acquired by noble Odysseus. He found him sitting in front, on the porch, where the lofty enclosure had been built, in a place with a view on all sides, both large and handsome, cleared all about. It was the swineherd himself who had built it, to hold the pigs of his absent master, far from his mistress and from aged Laertes. Inside the enclosure he made 12 pig pens for his sows to sleep in, and in each of them 50 pigs who sleep on the ground were confined. These were the breeding females, but the males lay outside, and these were fewer by far, for the godlike suitors kept diminishing their numbers by eating them. And the swineherd kept having to send in the best of all the well-fattened porkers at any time, since the suitors so forced him, so they could sacrifice it and glut their appetites on it. The wild baying dogs catch sight of Odysseus and run at him with a great outcry, and he prudently sits down on the ground, the staff falling from his hand. But the swineherd, quick and light on his feet, comes hurrying across the porch and lets fall the shoe he was holding. He shouts at the dogs and scatters them with volleyed showers of stones. "Old sir, the dogs were suddenly on you and would have savaged you badly. So you would have covered me with shame, but already there are other pains and sorrows the gods have bestowed upon me. I have to tend these pigs for another man's table, while my master, far off, somewhere, has perished. For here I sit, mourning and grieving away for a godlike master, and carefully raise his fattened pigs for others to eat, while he, in need of finding some sustenance, wanders some city or countryside of alien-speaking people, if he still is alive somewhere and looks on the sunlight. And you, if you had come upon these suitors feasting in his palace, you would have served them. They would have had their fill of your flesh." Eumaeus takes Odysseus into his hut, sets food before him, and pours wine. When Odysseus tells him that Odysseus is coming home, the swineherd shakes his head. "Old sir, I will never pay you that gift for good news, nor will Odysseus come to this house again. He has heard too many false hopes." But he tells the story of how he came to Ithaca, stolen as a child by the Phoenicians, sold to Laertes, raised alongside Penelope's daughter Timony. She loved me from the heart. Oh, how I miss her kindness now. He lists the wealth of Odysseus. 12 herds of cattle on the mainland, as many sheep flocks, as many troops of pigs and goat flocks. And day by day, each of these people brings in for the suitors a sheep, and each brings in the fatted goat that seems finest. And I myself keep watch on these pigs and guard them, and I too choose with care the best of the pigs, and send it off to them. Then Odysseus, still disguised, swears by Zeus and the hearth of blameless Odysseus that the man is coming home. Sometime within this very year, Odysseus will be here, either at the waning of the moon or at its onset. He will come home and take his vengeance here upon any who deprives his wife and his glorious son of their due honor. But Eumaeus will not be persuaded. He tells of how an Aetolian man once came to his house, spun a story about Odysseus being seen with Idomeneus, and Eumaeus fed and entertained him, only to learn later it was all lies. You too, old man of many sorrows, since the Spirit brought you here to me, do not try to please me nor spell me with lying words. It is not for that I will entertain and befriend you, but for fear of Zeus, the god of guests, and for my own pity. Then Odysseus, still hiding his identity, tells a long tale, a fiction, but one woven with threads of truth. He claims to be from Crete, son of a rich man, a bastard born of a concubine. He tells of fighting at Troy, of the long wanderings after the war, of being taken to Egypt where his companions plundered the fields and were struck down by the Egyptians and the wrath of Zeus. Then for 9 years we sons of the Achaeans fought there, and in the 10th we sacked the city of Priam, and went back homeward with our ships, and the gods scattered the Achaeans. But for wretched me Zeus of the councils devised more hardships. 1 month only I stayed, taking pleasure in my children and my wedded wife and my possessions. But then the spirit within me urged me to make an expedition to Egypt with ships well appointed and with my godlike companions. He tells of a storm that wrecked his ship, of clinging to the mast for 9 days, of being cast up on the shore of Thesprotia, where King Phaedon told him of Odysseus passing through, of being put on a ship to Dulichion by men who plotted to sell him into slavery, of escaping at night by loosening the knots the gods themselves untied. The story is told with love and longing. Eumaeus remembers Odysseus as the cleverest and bravest of all the Achaeans, and his grief is real. He lays a bed for the stranger by the fire, and throws over him a great thick mantle. Then he sleeps outside with the pigs, guarding them with his sword and javelin, while rain pours down all night long. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Antinous and Eurymachus learn that Telemachus has sailed for Pylos. Antinous proposes to ambush him at Asteris. Let a ship be launched in silence, with 20 men, and we will wait for him there. They draw lots and choose the ship, and the young men prepare for murder. Quote, I have to tend these pigs for another man's table, while my master far off somewhere has perished. Quote, hear me, friends. In my sleep a divine dream came to me. We have come too far away from the ships. Quote, it is not for that I will entertain and befriend you, but for fear of Zeus, the god of guests, and for my own pity. Book 15. At this time, Pallas Athene made her way into wide-spaced Lake Damon to remind the shining son of great-hearted Odysseus of his journey home and speed his homecoming. She found Telemachus there with the glorious son of Nestor, sleeping in the forecourt of worshipful Menelaus. Indeed, the son of Nestor was held fast in the softening sleep, but the sweet sleep was not on Telemachus, wakeful through the immortal night, with anxious thoughts of his father. Gray-eyed Athene stood close by his head and addressed him. Telemachus, it no longer becomes you to stray off so far from home, leaving your possessions behind and men in your palace who are so overbearing. You must not let them divide up and eat up all your substance and make your journey a vain one. So urge Menelaus of the great war cry with all speed to give you conveyance. So you will find your stately mother is still their home, since now her father and her brothers are urgent with her to marry Eurymachus. He is outdoing the rest of suitors in the giving of gifts and has been piling up presents to win her. No property must go out of the house, unless you consent to it. Athene warns him further. The best men of the suitors are lying in wait, on purpose, for you in the passage between rocky Samos and Ithaca, longing to kill you before you come back to your own country. But I think they will not achieve it. Sooner the earth will close over some one of the suitors, they who are eating away your substance. But you must keep your well-made ship away from the islands, and sail with the night, and that one of the immortals who watches over you and guards you will send a following stern wind. But when you make land at the first promontory on Ithaca, then speed your ship and all your companions along to the city. But you yourself go first of all to the swineherd, that man who is in charge of the pigs, and whose thoughts toward you are kindly. At dawn, Menelaos of the great war cry comes and offers gifts, a handled goblet of silver and gold, wrought by Hephaestos, and a mixing bowl of silver. Helen adds a robe she herself had made, the loveliest in design, that shone like a star. I too give you this gift, dear child, something to remember from Helen's hands, for your wife to wear at the lovely occasion of your marriage. As they drive away, an eagle carries a white goose in its talons, and Helen interprets the omen. As this eagle came down from the mountain, where was his origin and parentage, and caught the goose that was nursed in the household, so Odysseus, after wandering long and suffering much, will come home and take revenge, or he is already home, and making a plan of evil for all of the suitors. Telemachus reaches Pylos, but does not go to the city, for he fears Nestor's affection will keep him. As he prays beside his ship, a fugitive comes to him, Theoclymenos, a prophet of the stock of Melampus, who has killed a man of his tribe and is a wanderer. He begs for passage. Give me a place in your ship, since I have come to you as a suppliant, lest they kill me, for now I think they are after me. Telemachus takes him aboard, and Athene sends a favorable stern wind. Meanwhile, back at the swineherd's shelter, Odysseus speaks to Eumaeus, making trial of the man to see if he will invite him to stay or urge him to go to the city. I am very eager to make my way at dawn to the city and beg there, so I will not wear you out and your men. Only advise me well, and send a good guide to go along with me and see me there. Once in the town, I must even go begging in my need for someone to hand me a bit of bread or a cupful, and I would mingle with the overbearing suitors to see if they who have good things in great numbers would give me a dinner. Soon I would do good work for them, whatever they wanted. Eumaeus is troubled. Are you utterly bent on achieving your own destruction there, if you mean to lose yourself in that swarm of suitors whose outrageous violence goes up into the iron sky? Eumaeus tells Odysseus the story of Laertes, still alive, but praying to Zeus that the spirit will leave his body in his own palace, for terribly he mourns over the absent son and the wife who died of grieving. She died of grieving over her glorious son by a dismal death. I hope that no friend who lives here with me dies such a death. He tells how Penelope raised him alongside her daughter Timone, and how he once was like a king's son. But now he lacks all those things, and the suitor's violence weighs upon the house. Quote, no property must go out of the house, unless you consent to it. Quote, give me a place in your ship, since I have come to you as a suppliant, lest they kill me. Quote, she died of grieving over her glorious son by a dismal death. Book 16. These two in the shelter, Odysseus and the noble swineherd, stirred the fire at dawn, and arranged their breakfast, and sent the herdsmen out with the pasturing pigs. At this time the clamorous dogs came fawning around Telemachus, nor did they bark at him as he came, and great Odysseus noticed that the dogs were fawning. Above them he heard the loud noise of footsteps. Immediately he spoke in winged words to Eumaeus. Eumaeus, someone is on his way here who is truly one of yours, or else well known. Since the dogs are not barking, but fawning about him, I can hear the thud of his footsteps. His whole word had not been spoken when his beloved son stood in the forecourt. Amazed, the swineherd started up, and the vessels, where he had been busily mixing the bright wine, fell from his hand. He came up to meet his master, and kissed his head, and kissed too his beautiful shining eyes, and both his hands, and the swelling tear fell from him. And as a father, with heart full of love, welcomes his only and grown son, for whose sake he has undergone many hardships when he comes back in the 10th year from a distant country. So now the noble swineherd, clinging fast to godlike Telemachos, kissed him even as if he had escaped dying. In a burst of weeping he spoke to him in winged words. "You have come, Telemachos, sweet light. I thought I would never see you again, when you had gone in the ship to Pylos. But come now into the house, dear child, so that I can pleasure my heart with looking at you again when you are inside." Telemachos asks about his mother, whether my mother endures still in the halls, or whether some other man has married her, and the bed of Odysseus lies forlorn of sleepers with spider webs grown upon it. The swineherd answers, "All too much with enduring heart she does wait for him there in your own palace, and always with her the wretched nights, and the days also waste her away with weeping." They eat together, and then Telemachos tells the swineherd to go to Penelope with news of his safe return, and to send word to Laertes as well. Eumaeus departs. Then Athene appears, likened to a woman beautiful and tall, and seen only by Odysseus and the dogs. She tells him, "Son of Laertes and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, it is time now to tell your son the story. No longer hide it, so that contriving death and doom for the suitors, you too may go to the glorious city." With her golden wand she taps him, and his dark color comes back, his jaws firm, and the beard turns black. Telemachos is astonished. "Suddenly you have changed, my friend, from what you were formerly. Your skin is no longer as it was. You have other clothing. Surely you are one of the gods who hold the high heaven." Then Odysseus reveals himself. "No, I am not a god. Why liken me to the immortals? But I am your father, for whose sake you are always grieving as you look for violence from others and endure hardships." He kisses his son, and the tears running down his cheeks splash on the ground. Until now, he was always unyielding. But Telemachos does not yet believe. "No, you are not Odysseus my father, but some divinity beguiles me, so that I must grieve the more and be sorry. For no man who was mortal could ever have so contrived it by his own mind alone." Then resourceful Odysseus speaks again. "Telemachos, it does not become you to wonder too much at your own father when he is here, nor doubt him. No other Odysseus than I will ever come back to you. But here I am, and I am as you see me, and after hardships and suffering much I have come, in the 20th year, back to my own country. But here you see the work of Athene, the giver of plunder, who turns me into whatever she pleases." They weep together, their cries more shrill than the outcry of birds, ospreys or vultures with hooked claws, whose children were stolen away by the men of the fields, before their wings grew strong. Then they make their plans. Odysseus tells his son how the Phaeacians brought him here, and that the gifts they gave lie stored in the caverns. "But now I have come to this place by the advice of Athene, so we together can make our plans to slaughter our enemies. They will go to the palace disguised, and Telemachos must hold himself back from the suitors no matter how badly they treat him. Odysseus will go as a beggar, and when the time comes, he will give the signal with a nod. Telemachos is to gather the weapons and lock them away, and when the suitors ask why, he will say he wants to keep them from being damaged by the fire. Quote, "You have come, Telemachos, sweet light. I thought I would never see you again." Quote, "I am your father, for whose sake you are always grieving." Book 17. But when the young dawn showed again with her rosy fingers, Telemachos, beloved son of godlike Odysseus, then bound underneath his feet the beautiful sandals, and took up a powerful spear which fitted his hand's grip, and went on his way to the city. And going he spoke to his swineherd, "Father, I am going to the city, so that my mother will see me, since, as I suppose, she will never give over that bitter lamentation of hers, and her tearful crying, until she sees me myself. But here is what I will tell you to do. Take this unhappy stranger to the city, so that there he can beg his dinner, and any who can give him his bit of bread and his cup full. It is not for me to put up with everybody, now when I have troubles on my mind." Then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn, and answered him, "Dear friend, Neither do I desire that he should detain me here. A beggar is better begging his dinner in the city than in the country. Whoever wants to will give me something, for I am no longer the right age to stay on the farms, to carry out any task the foreman imposes on me." So he spoke, but Telemachus strode out through the steading, walking fast and planning evil things for the suitors. When Telemachus arrived at the well-settled house, he carried his spear over to a tall column and propped it against it, and he himself went inside, stepping over the stone threshold. For the first to see him was his nurse, Euryclea, as she spread the fleeces on the elaborate chairs. She burst out in tears and went straight to him, and around him the other serving maids of patient-hearted Odysseus clustered, and made much of him, and kissed him on his head and his shoulders. But now circumspect Penelope came down from her chamber, looking like Artemis, or like golden Aphrodite, and burst into tears, and threw her arms around her beloved son, and kissed him on his head and both of his shining eyes, and tearfully spoke winged words. "You have come, Telemachus, sweet light, and I thought I would never see you again, when you had gone in the ship to Pylos secretly, and against my will, for news of the father you love." Telemachus tells her to wash and make offerings to the gods, and that he will summon his guest who came with him from Pylos. Penelope tells Eumaeus to bring the stranger to her, for she wishes to ask him news of Odysseus. Such stories, he tells, he would charm out the dear heart within you. He says that he is a friend by family of Odysseus, with his home in Crete, where lives the generation of Minos. When Telemachus sneezes at her words, Penelope laughs and says, "May it mean that death, accomplished in full, befall the suitors each and all, not one avoiding death and destruction." Meanwhile, Odysseus and the swineherd make their way toward the city. Odysseus sees the palace from afar and knows it among many. One part is joined on to another, and the courtyard is worked on with wall and copings, and the doors have been well made, with double panels. On the road, they meet Melanthios, the goatherd, who insults Odysseus. "There you go, you miserable beggar, a plague on you, a stinking nuisance. Why are you hanging around Pallas? Get away from here, you parasite." He strikes Odysseus with his staff, but Odysseus makes no move, only shakes his head silently, devising evils in his heart. The swineherd curses him and prays to the nymphs of the fountain. "If ever Odysseus burn for you the thigh pieces of lambs or goats, then grant me this favor, that the man himself will come home." When they reach the palace, Odysseus's old dog Argos recognizes him. The dog had been a great hunter, swift and powerful, but now he lies neglected on a dung heap, covered with ticks. He raises his head and pricks his ears, but cannot go to his master. Odysseus looks away and wipes a tear, and Eumaeus says, "That dog there, lying on the dung heap, is a thing of the past. If he were what he used to be, in the day when Odysseus left, you would see at once what speed and strength he had. He used to track down wild animals in the deep forest." But even as Odysseus recognizes the dog, Argos falls dead, having seen his master one last time, the 20th year. Odysseus goes inside as a beggar, and the suitors mock him. Antinous throws a footstool at him, striking his shoulder. "Get out of here, you cursed nuisance, you wretched thing. Am I not a god already, with all these guests?" But Odysseus bears it in silence, and goes to sit by the threshold. Eurymachus taunts him further, and Antinous laughs and says, "I will give you a prize for being a good sport. I'll throw you something, a scrap from the table." But Odysseus speaks back, "Antinous, I wish the day had been as good for you as your gifts. The day you hit me with that stool, my footstool, and struck me, and I was driven from the city." The suitors are amused by his defiance, but Antinous grows angry. Odysseus eats his meal in silence, plotting the destruction of all the suitors. Penelope, from above, hears of the beggar's words and is moved. She sends Eumaeus to summon him, saying she wishes to ask news of Odysseus. But Odysseus declines, saying he will come when the stars grow thin and the suitors depart, for he is afraid. Eumaeus goes back to the pigs, leaving Odysseus in the palace, sitting by the threshold, plotting the destruction of the suitors. Telemachus signals him with his eyes to sit and be silent, and the suitors go on with their feasting. Quote, "You have come, Telemachus, sweet light, and I thought I would never see you again." Quote, "I wish the day had been as good for you as your gifts." Book 18. And now there arrived a public beggar, who used to go begging through the town of Ithaca, known to fame for his ravenous belly and appetite for eating and drinking. There was no real strength in him, nor any force, but his build was big to look at. He had the name Arneos, for thus the lady his mother called him from birth, but all the young men used to call him Iros, because he would run and give messages when anyone told him. This man had come to chase Odysseus out of his own house, and now he spoke, insulting him, "Give way, old sir, from the forecourt before you are taken and dragged out by the foot. Do you see how all of them are giving the signal and telling me to drag you? Still, I am ashamed to do it. So up, before it comes to a battle of hands between us." Then looking at him darkly resourceful, Odysseus answered, "Strange man, I am doing you no harm, nor speaking any, nor am I jealous, if someone takes plenty and gives it to you. This Dorzel is big enough for both of us, nor have you any need to be jealous of others. I think you are a vagabond as I am too. Prosperity is in the gods' giving. Leave blows alone, do not press me too hard, or you may make me angry so that old as I am, I may give you a bloody chest and mouth. Then I could have peace, and still more of it tomorrow, for I do not think you will make your way back here a second time to the house of Odysseus, son of Laertes." Then in anger Iros the vagabond said to him, "Shame on how the old hulk rolls along in his speech, like an old woman at the oven. I have some bad plans for him. Hit him with both hands, and spatter all of the teeth out from his jaws on the ground, as if he were a wild pig rooting the crops." So, in front of the towering doors, and upon the threshold polished smooth, these two hurled jagged words at each other, and Antinous, the sacred prince, stirred them on to battle, and laughing sweetly, he spoke aloud to the rest of the suitors, "Friends, in the past nothing has ever happened to match this entertainment that the god has now brought to the palace, for the stranger and Iros are now making ready for battle with their fists. Come, let the rest of us speed the encounter." Antinous sets up the match, goat paunches stuffed with blood and fat, to be eaten after supper, as the prize for the winner. But resourceful Odysseus, with crafty thought, says, "Friends, it is not possible for a man who is older and worn with sorrow to fight with a younger man, but my villainous belly drives me to do it, and fall to his fists. Therefore, come, swear me a strong oath, all of you, that no one will take the side of Iros and light-heartedly strike me down with a heavy hand, and make me fall to his onset." They all swear the oath. Telemachus also speaks, "Stranger, if your heart and spirit are urgent with you to defend yourself against this man, then fear no other Achaean. The man who strikes you shall have to fight against numbers." Odysseus girds up his rags about his body, displaying his thighs, splendid and large, and one could see the wide shoulders. His chest showed, and his ponderous arms. And Athene magnified his limbs, and the suitors, all in their insolence, were astonished. Iros will soon be Iros no more, with himself to thank for the evil. See what limbs the old man's rags have uncovered. But even so Iros was frightened, and the flesh shook all over his body. Antinous scolded him, "If this man wins the fight with you, and is proved the better, I will throw you into a black ship, and send you across to the mainland, to Achaetos, who preys on all men, and he with the pitiless bronze will cut off your nose and ears, and tear off your privates, and give them raw for the dogs to feed on." They fight, and Odysseus strikes Iros on the neck beneath the ear, and the blood gushes out, and the beggar falls, groaning. The suitors are amazed and laugh. Odysseus drags Iros by the foot out through the doors to the threshold and the echoing courtyard, and props him against the wall. "There, you wretched thing, stay and feed the dogs and pigs. Do not trouble men again." Then he claims the prize of the goat paunches. At this moment Penelope appears from her chamber, looking like Artemis or golden Aphrodite, and the suitors are stunned. She tells the suitors she will set up the contest of the axes, the bow of Odysseus, and whoever strings it and shoots through 12 axe rings, she will marry. She weeps for Odysseus as she speaks, and Antinous and Eurymachos try to calm her. But the suitors are troubled, for they fear the strength of Odysseus. Quote, prosperity is in the gods' giving. Book 19. Now great Odysseus still remained in the hall, pondering how, with the help of Athene, he would murder the suitors. Presently he spoke in winged words to Telemachos. Telemachos, we must have the weapons stored away inside the high chamber, and when the suitors miss them and ask you about them, answer and beguile them with soft words, saying, I stored them away out of the smoke, since they are no longer like what Odysseus left behind when he went to Troy land, but are made foul with all the smoke of the fire upon them. Also, some divinity put into my head this even greater thought, that with the wine in you, you might stand up and fight, and wound each other, and spoil the feast and the courting, since iron all of itself works on a man and attracts him. So he spoke, and Telemachos obeyed his dear father, and summoned out Euryclea his nurse. The two men, Odysseus and his glorious son, sprang up and began carrying helmets, shields massive in the middle, and pointed spears, and before them Pallas Athene, holding a golden lamp, gave them splendid illumination. Telemachos speaks in wonder. Father, here is a great wonder that my eyes look on. Always it seems that the chamber walls, the handsome bases and roof timbers of fir and tall columns sustaining them, shine in my eyes as if a fire were blazing. But Odysseus tells him to keep silent, for this is the very way of the gods. Then circumspect Penelope came down from her chamber, looking like Artemis or like golden Aphrodite, and sat by the hearth in her ivory and silver chair. She speaks to Odysseus. Stranger, I myself first have a question to ask you. What man are you, and whence? Where's your city? Your parents? Odysseus answers with the tale of the Cretan wanderer, the same fiction he told to Eumaeus, but with careful embellishment. He tells of his supposed father Castor, honored among the Cretans, and of his half-brothers who divided the inheritance. He speaks of how Odysseus once stopped at his house on the way to Troy, and how he gave him gifts, a silver mixing bowl, a golden goblet, a cloak and tunic. He tells of fighting at Troy, of the long wanderings, of the storm that wrecked his ship, of being cast up on the shore of the Phaeacians. Penelope weeps as she listens, for she remembers how Odysseus came to her house, looking like the sun in its glory. She tells him of her own sorrow. All of my excellence, my beauty and figure, were ruined by the immortals at that time, when the Argives took ship for Ilion, and with them went my husband, Odysseus. If he were to come back to me and take care of my life, then my reputation would be more great and splendid. She tells of her weaving, the great web she set up on her loom, working on it by day and undoing it by night, to delay the suitors. Young men, my suitors, now that the great Odysseus has perished, though he is not dead, wait until I shall have completed this web, so that I shall not lose the skill of my weaving. This is a burial shroud for the hero Laertes. For 3 years she deceived them, but in the 4th her servants betrayed her. Then Penelope tests Odysseus with the story of the bed. Stranger, I wish to test you. Tell me, what sort of clothing did Odysseus wear when he came to you, and what sort of men were with him? Odysseus answers with the truth hidden in fiction. It is hard for a mortal man to come upon such a man as Odysseus, but now, since the time urges me, I will tell you. In the island Ios, there is an old oak with thick leaves, and beneath it a spring of sweet water, and around it a meadow of soft grass. It was there that Odysseus rested, and the cold rain came, and he wrapped himself in a mantle and spread it over him, and lay beneath an olive tree. When I gave him the clothes, I noted a scar on his thigh, from a wound he had received long ago from a boar on Parnassus, when he was a young man, hunting with his grandfather Autolycus, the master of all sophistries. When she hears this, Penelope weeps and says, Stranger, I will test you no more. But I know the scar. It is the scar of Odysseus. He bore it, and I knew it, but now I will hide it no longer. She tells of a dream she had, an eagle killing her geese, and then it spoke. The courtship is finished. Odysseus is at hand. She believes the dream, but is still uncertain. She offers to set up the contest of the axes, the bow of Odysseus, and whoever strings it and shoots through 12 axe rings, she will marry. Then old Euryclea, the nurse, recognizes the scar. She had been washing Odysseus's feet, and she felt the scar and knew him. Her hands trembled, and her eyes filled with tears, and she spoke, "Child, it is you yourself. I knew you at once, but I would not speak, for my heart told me to keep silent." But Odysseus puts his hand over her mouth and bids her be silent, for the time has not yet come. "Old nurse, keep silent, and do not wake the household. For I will tell you this, and it will be a thing accomplished. If the gods let me kill the suitors, I will spare no one of the guilty, serving women." The old nurse agrees, and goes out of the chamber with the water used to wash his feet. Quote, "Since iron all of itself works on a man and attracts him," quote, "it is hard for a mortal man to come upon such a man as Odysseus." Quote, "I knew you at once, but I would not speak, for my heart told me to keep silent." Book 20. Then the noble Odysseus bedded down in the forecourt, and spread beneath him the raw hide of an ox, and uppermost many fleeces of sheep the Achaeans had dedicated. Where he had lain down, Eurynomy threw a blanket over him. There, devising evils in his heart for the suitors, Odysseus lay awake, and out of the palace issued those women who in the past had been going to bed with the suitors, full of cheerful spirits, and greeting each other with laughter. But the spirit deep in the heart of Odysseus was stirred by this, and much he pondered in the division of mind and spirit, whether to spring on them and kill each one, or rather to let them lie this one more time with the insolent suitors, for the last and latest time. But the heart was growling within him. And as a bitch, facing an unknown man, stands over her callow puppies, and growls and rages to fight, so Odysseus' heart was growling inside him as he looked on these wicked actions. He struck himself on the chest, and spoke to his heart, and scolded it. "Bear up, my heart. You have had worse to endure before this on that day, when the irresistible Cyclops ate up my strong companions. But you endured it until intelligence got you out of the cave, though you expected to perish." At this time Athene, descending from the sky, came close to him, and wore the shape of a lady. She came and stood above his head, and spoke a word to him. "Why are you wakeful now, O most wretched of all men? Here is your house, and here is your wife in the house, and here is your son, and he is the kind of son any man would long for." Then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn, and answered her, "Yes, O goddess, all you have said was fair and orderly. Yet still, here is something the heart inside me is pondering. How, when I am alone against many, I can lay hands on the shameless suitors. And they are always here in a body. And here is a still bigger problem that my heart is pondering. Even if, by grace of Zeus and yourself, I kill them, how shall I make my escape?" Then in turn the goddess, gray-eyed Athene, said to him, "Stubborn man, anyone trusts even a lesser companion than I, who is mortal and does not have so many ideas. But I am a god, and through it all I keep watch over you in every endeavor of yours. And now I tell you this plainly. Even though there were 50 battalions of mortal people standing around us, furious to kill in the spirit of battle, even so you could drive away their cattle and fat sheep. So let sleep take you now. There is annoyance in lying awake and on guard all night. You will soon be out of your troubles." She scattered slumber over his eyelids and went back to Olympos. But his virtuous wife wakened in turn and cried, sitting up in her soft bed. After she had satisfied all her desire with weeping, she prayed to Artemis. "Artemis, goddess and queen, daughter of Zeus, how I wish that with the cast of your arrow you could take the life from inside my heart, this moment, or that soon the storm wind would snatch me away, and be gone, carrying me down misty pathways, and set me down where the recurrent ocean empties his stream." She tells the story of the daughters of Pandarios. The storm winds carried them away and gave them over into the care of the hateful Furies. Yet the evil is endurable when one cries through the days, with heart constantly troubled, yet still is taken by sleep in the nights. For sleep is oblivion of all things, both good and evil, when it has shrouded the eyelids. At dawn, Odysseus prays to Zeus, and the god answers with a sign. A woman grinding grain in the palace cries out that her millstone's head was broken, and the suitors laugh. Odysseus sees this as an omen. The millstone is the last thing broken before death. The suitors gather for their feast, and Odysseus eats at the threshold. Philoetios, the cowherd, brings him a special portion, and Eumaeus brings him a sword and a spear, for they know who he is. The suitors grow more insolent, and Amphinomos speaks. Friends, if the gods have ordained this man's death, let us kill him here in the house, not in the streets. But Amphinomos is warned by the omen of the birds, and withdraws from the palace. Quote, "Bear up, my heart. You have had worse to endure before this." Quote, "Even though there were 50 battalions of mortal people standing around us, even so you could drive away their cattle and fat sheep." Quote, "For sleep is oblivion of all things, both good and evil, when it has shrouded the eyelids." Book 21. But now the goddess, gray-eyed Athene, put it in the mind of the daughter of Icarios, circumspect Penelope, to set the bow before the suitors and the gray iron in the house of Odysseus. The contest, the beginning of the slaughter. She ascended the high staircase of her own house, and in her solid hand took up the beautiful, brazen, and artfully curved key with an ivory handle upon it. With her attendant women, she went to the inmost recess of the chamber, where the master's possessions were stored, bronze and gold, and difficulty-wrought iron, and there the backstrung bow was stored away, and the quiver to hold the arrows. There were many painful shafts inside it. These were gifts from a friend whom he met in Lake Damon, Iphitos, son of Eurytus, one like the immortal gods. When she, shining among women, had come to the chamber, she first set the fastening free of the hook, then she inserted the key and knocked the bolt upward, and the door bellowed aloud, as a bull does when he feeds in his pasture. Then she went up to the high platform, where there were standing chests, and in these were stored fragrant pieces of clothing. From there she reached and took the bow from its peg, where it hung, in its own case, a shining thing that covered it. Thereupon she sat down, and laid the bow on her dear knees, while she took her lord's bow out of its case, all the while weeping aloud. But when she had sated herself with tears and crying, she went on her way to the hall to be with the lordly suitors, bearing in her hand the backstrung bow, and the quiver to hold the arrows, with many sorrowful shafts inside it. Her serving women carried the box for her, and there lay much iron and bronze, prizes that had been won by the master. When she, shining among women, came near the suitors, she stood by the pillar that supported the roof with its joinery, holding her shining veil in front of her face to shield it. Now at once she spoke and addressed a word to the suitors. "Hear me now, you haughty suitors, who have been using this house for your incessant eating and drinking, though it belongs to a man who has been gone for a long time. Have you been able to bring any other saying before me, but only your desire to make me your wife and marry me? But come, you suitors, since here is a prize set out before you, for I shall bring you the great bow of godlike Odysseus. And the one who takes the bow in his hands, strings it with the greatest ease, and sends an arrow clean through all the 12 axes, shall be the one I go away with, forsaking this house where I was a bride, a lovely place and full of good living." She told the noble swineherd, Eumaeus, to put the bow and the gray iron in front of the suitors. Eumaeus accepted it, in tears, and put them before them, and the oxherd also wept when he saw the bow of his master. But Antinous scolded the two of them. "You foolish countrymen, who never think of tomorrow, poor wretches, why are you streaming tears and troubling the lady now, and stirring her heart, when she has enough already of sadness her heart rests on?" Then the suitors rise one by one and try to string the bow. Antinous tries first, but he cannot even bend the bow, for it is too strong. Eurymachos tries, and comes close. He gets the bow string set in the notches, but his heart fails him. Amphinomos tries, and gets the bow almost strung, but then he sets it down, for he does not wish to shoot. One by one they all try, and one by one they fail. Telemachus watches and says, "This is my father's bow. I'm the strongest of them all. I will try to string it and shoot through all the 12 axes." Quote, "And the one who takes the bow in his hands strings it with the greatest ease and sends an arrow clean through all the 12 axes shall be the one I go away with." Quote, "I think that even in my dreams I shall never forget it." Book 22. Now resourceful Odysseus stripped his rags from him and sprang up atop the great threshold, holding his bow and the quiver filled with arrows, and scattered out the swift shafts before him on the ground next his feet. He spoke his word to the suitors. "Here is a task that has been achieved without any deception. Now I shall shoot at another mark, one that no man yet has hit, if I can hit it and Apollo grants me the glory." And he steered a bitter arrow against Antinous. That man was on the point of lifting up a fine two-handled goblet of gold, and had it in his hands, and was moving it so as to drink of the wine, and in his heart there was no thought of death. For who would think that one man, alone in a company of many men at their feasting, though he were a very strong one, would ever inflict death upon him and dark doom? But Odysseus, aiming at this man, struck him in the throat with an arrow, and clean through the soft part of the neck the point was driven. He slumped away to one side, and out of his stricken hand fell the goblet, and up and through his nostrils there burst a thick jet of mortal blood, and with a thrust of his foot he kicked back the table from him, so that all the good food was scattered on the ground, bread and baked meats together. But all the suitors clamored about the house when they saw that the man was fallen. They sprang up from their seats, but there was never a shield there, nor any strong spear for them. But looking darkly upon them, resourceful Odysseus answered, "You dogs, you never thought that I would any more come back from the land of Troy, and because of that you despoiled my household, and forcibly took my serving women to sleep beside you, and sought to win my wife while I was still alive, fearing neither the immortal gods who hold the wide heaven, nor any resentment sprung from men to be yours in the future. Now upon all of you the terms of destruction are fastened." Only Eurymachus spoke up and gave him an answer, pleading that Antinous was the ringleader, and that the rest would make public reparation in bronze and gold. Then, looking darkly at him, resourceful Odysseus answered, "Eurymachus, if you gave me all your father's possessions, all that you have now, and what you could add from elsewhere, even so, I would not stay my hands from the slaughter, until I had taken revenge for all the suitors' transgression." So he spoke, and the others' knees, and the heart within them, went slack, but Eurymachus cried a second time to the suitors to draw their swords and rush him. He drew his own sharp brazen sword, and made a rush at Odysseus, crying his terrible cry. At the same time, noble Odysseus shot an arrow, and struck him in the chest by the nipple, and the speeding arrow fixed in his liver, and his sword tumbled out of his hand on the floor as he fell, scattering the good food on the floor and the two-handled goblet. Over his eyes the death mist drifted. Then Amphinomos sprang forward to face glorious Odysseus. But Telemachus was too quick with a cast of the brazen spear from behind him between the shoulders, and drove it through to the chest beyond it. He fell thunderously, and took the earth full on his forehead. Telemachus ran to his father and spoke, "Father, now I will go and bring you a shield, and 2 spears, and a helmet all of bronze." Resourceful Odysseus answered, "Run and fetch them, while I have arrows still to defend me, or else they might force me from the doorway." Telemachus obeyed, and brought back 4 shields, 8 spears, and 4 helmets crested with horsehair. He was the first to put the bronze armor upon him, and in the same way the 2 serving men put on their arms, and stood beside the wise, resourceful Odysseus, while he still had arrows left, kept aiming at the suitors, and every time he hit his man, and they dropped one after another. But when there were no more arrows left, he set the bow against a pillar and armed himself with shield, helmet, and 2 powerful spears. Then Melanthios the goatherd betrayed them, climbing through the vents to bring the suitors' shields and spears. Odysseus saw them arming and groaned. The swineherd and the oxherd seized Melanthios, twisted his feet and arms behind him, and hoisted him up to the roof beams on a braided rope, where he hung in torment. Now to these men came the daughter of Zeus, Athene, likening herself in voice and appearance to Mentor. Odysseus was happy when he saw her. The suitors cried out against her, and Agelaus threatened death. But Athene in her heart grew still more angry, and she scolded Odysseus. No longer, Odysseus, are the strength and valor still steady within you, as when you fought 9 years with the Trojans. How is it now, when you have come back to your own possessions and house, you complain? She spoke, but did not yet altogether turn the victory their way. She still was putting to proof the strength and courage alike of Odysseus and his glorious son. Agelaus urged on the remaining suitors to throw their spears all at once, but Athene made vain all their casts. But then Odysseus spoke to his companions, and they threw. Demoptolemus was killed by Odysseus, Euryades by Telemachus, Elatos by the swineherd, Pysandros by Philoetios. Then Odysseus struck down Eurydamas, Telemachus hit Amphimedon, the swineherd Polybos, and Philoetios struck Ctesippus full in the chest. Then Odysseus stabbed Agelaus, and Telemachus stabbed Leocritos, driving the bronze clean through. And now Athene waved the aegis from high aloft on the roof, and all their wits were bewildered, and they stampeded about the hall, like a herd of cattle set upon by the darting horsefly, while the others were like hook-clawed vultures plunging upon lesser birds. So these men, sweeping about the palace, struck down the suitors, one after another. The floor was smoking with blood, and the horrible cries rose up. Leoder rushed in and caught the knees of Odysseus, pleading innocence. But Odysseus answered, "If you claim to be the diviner among these people, many a time you must have prayed that my homecoming be far off from me." And with a sword he cut through the neck, and the head of Leoder dropped in the dust. Then Phemios the singer seized the knees of Odysseus, pleading that he sang under compulsion. Telemachus spoke, "Hold fast. Do not strike this man. He is innocent, and let us spare Medon our herald." Odysseus smiled and answered, "Go out now from the palace and sit outside, away from the slaughter, so that I can do the work that I have to." So the singer and the herald went outside. Odysseus looked about his house, and saw them all lying fallen in their blood and in the dust. Then he called for Euryclea, and told her to assemble the women. She said, "Of these 50, 12 in all have taken to immorality." Odysseus told her not to wake Penelope yet, but to bring the faithless women. Then he told Telemachus and the herdsmen to carry out the bodies, wash the chairs and tables, and lead the maidservants out between the round house and the wall. Telemachus spoke, "I would not take away the lives of these creatures by any clean death, for they have showered abuse on the head of my mother, and on my own head too." So he fastened the cable of a dark-prowed ship to the tall pillar, and like thrushes caught fast in a noose, their heads were all in a line, and they struggled with their feet for a little, not for very long. They took Melanthios along the porch and dealt with him with the pitiless bronze. Then, after they had washed their hands and feet clean, they went into the house of Odysseus. Their work was ended, but Odysseus told Euryclea to bring brimstone and fire, so he could sulfur the hall. Odysseus cleaned his palace, house and courtyard alike, with sulfur. Then the serving women came with torches and clung to Odysseus, and kissed him on his head and his shoulders and hands, admiring him, and sweet longing for lamentation and tears took hold of him. He recognized all these women. Book 23. The old woman, laughing loudly, went to the upper chamber to tell Penelope that Odysseus was inside the house, and had killed the haughty suitors who were afflicting his house. But Penelope said, "Dear nurse, the gods have driven you crazy. Why do you insult me when my heart is heavy with sorrows? For I have not had such a sleep as this one, since the time when Odysseus went to that evil, not to be mentioned island." Then Euryclea said, "I am not insulting you, dear child. It is all true. Odysseus is here, just as I tell you. He is that stranger guest whom all in the house were abusing. Telemachus has known that he was here for a long time, but he was discreet and did not betray the plans of his father. That scar which once the boar inflicted, I recognized it while I was washing his feet, and I want to tell you about it. But he stopped my mouth with his hands. So Penelope in her joy sprang up from the bed, her eyes streaming tears, and she came down from the chamber, her heart pondering much, whether to keep away and question her dear husband, or to go up to him and kiss his head. But then, when she came in and stepped over the stone threshold, she sat across from him in the firelight, facing Odysseus by the opposite wall, while he was seated by the tall pillar, looking downward. She sat a long time in silence, and her heart was wondering. Sometimes she would look at him, with her eyes full upon him, and again would fail to know him in the foul clothing he wore. Telemachus spoke and scolded her. "My mother, my harsh mother with a hard heart inside you, why do you withdraw so from my father? No other woman, with spirit as stubborn as yours, would keep back as you are doing from her husband who, after much suffering, came at last in the 20th year back to his own country." Then Penelope answered, "My child, the spirit that is in me is full of wonderment, and I cannot find anything to say to him, nor look him straight in the face. But if he is truly Odysseus, and he has come home, then we shall find other ways to recognize each other, for we have signs that we know of between the two of us only." So she spoke, and much enduring noble Odysseus smiled, and spoke in winged words to Telemachus, "Leave your mother to examine me in the palace as she will. But let us make our plans how all will come out best for us. For when one has killed only one man in a community, even so, he flees into exile. But we have killed what held the city together, the finest young men in Ithaca." Then resourceful Odysseus answered himself, "First, all go and wash, and put your tunics upon you. Then let the inspired singer take his clear-sounding lyre, and give us the lead for festive dance, so that anyone who is outside will think we are having a wedding. Let no rumor go abroad in the town that the suitors have been murdered, until such time as we can make our way out to our estate with its many trees." So he spoke, and they obeyed him. Now the housekeeper Eurynomé bathed great-hearted Odysseus in his own house, and anointed him with olive oil, and threw a beautiful mantle and a tunic about him. And over his head Athene suffused great beauty, to make him taller to behold and thicker, and on his head she arranged the curling locks that hung down like hyacinthine petals. Then, looking like an immortal, he strode forth from the bath, and sat on the chair opposite his wife, and spoke to her. "You are so strange. The gods have made your heart more stubborn than for the rest of womankind. No other woman would keep back as you are doing from her husband who, after much suffering, came at last in the 20th year back to his own country." Then Penelope said, "Come then, Euryclea, and make up a firm bed for him outside the well-fashioned chamber, that very bed that he himself built." So she spoke, trying him out. But Odysseus spoke in anger. "What you have said, dear lady, has hurt my heart deeply. What man has put my bed in another place? There is one particular feature in the bed's construction. I myself, no other man, made it. There was the bole of an olive tree, with long leaves growing strongly in the courtyard, and it was thick, like a column. I laid down my chamber around this, and built it until I finished it with close-set stones. Then I cut away the foliage of the long-leaved olive, and trimmed the trunk from the roots up, planing it with a brazen adze, making a bedpost of it, and bored all holes with an auger. I began with this and built my bed, until it was finished, and decorated it with gold and silver and ivory." So he spoke, and her knees and the heart within her went slack as she recognized the clear proofs. She burst out in tears and ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, and kissed his head. "Do not be angry at me, Odysseus, for in every way I have had understanding, and you too. But the gods have willed it, that we should have suffered. Now I am convinced, and my heart knows it, the thought of our bed, which you described to me in every detail. And as when the welcome land appears to swimmers, when Poseidon has shattered their ship on the sea, and many of its timbers have been broken, but few men escape from the gray water and crawl onto the land, all scurfy with brine, and much gladly they set foot on the shore, and escape their destruction. So welcome was her husband to her, as she looked upon him, and her white arms would never let go his neck." Book 24. Now Selenian Hermes called away the suitors' ghosts, holding firm in his hand the wand of fine pure gold that enchants the eyes of men whenever Hermes wants or wakes us up from sleep. With a wave of this he stirred and led them on, and the ghosts trailed after with high thin cries, as bats cry in the depths of a dark haunted cavern, shrilling, flittering, wild when one drops from the chain. So with their high thin cries the ghosts flocked now, and Hermes the healer led them on, and down the dank moldering paths, and past the ocean streams they went, and past the white rock in the sun's western gates, and past the land of dreams, and they soon reached the fields of asphodel where the dead, the burnt-out wraiths of mortals, make their home. There they found the ghosts of Peleus' son Achilles, Patroclus, fearless Antilochus, and great Ajax too, the first in stature, first in build and bearing of all the Argives after Peleus' matchless son. They had grouped around Achilles' ghost, and now the shade of Atreus' son Agamemnon marched toward them, fraught with grief and flanked by all his comrades, troops of his men-at-arms who died beside him, who met their fate in Lord Aegisthus' halls. Achilles' ghost was first to greet him. Agamemnon, you are the one, we thought, of all our fighting princes Zeus who loves the lightning favored most. All your days, because you commanded such a powerful host of men on the fields of Troy, where we Achaeans suffered. But you were doomed to encounter fate so early, you too, yet no one born escapes its deadly force. And the ghost of Agamemnon answered, Happy man, you died on the fields of Troy, a world away from home, and the best of Trojan and Argive champions died around you, fighting for your corpse. But I? What joy for me when the coil of war had wound down. For my return Zeus hatched a pitiful death at the hands of Aegisthus and my accursed wife. As they exchanged the stories of their fates, Hermes the guide drew up close to both, leading down the ghosts of the suitors King Odysseus killed. Struck by the sight, the two went up to them right away, and Agamemnon recognized the noted prince Amphimedon. Amphimedon, what disaster brings you down to the dark world? All of you, good-picked men, and all in your prime. What laid you low? Then the ghost of Amphimedon told him the whole story, how they had courted Penelope, how Odysseus came home in the guise of a beggar, and how at last he killed them all. When Agamemnon heard the tale, he answered, Happy Odysseus, son of Laertes, what a wife you've won. The fame of her will never die, the faithful Penelope, daughter of Icarius. How different from the wife of Agamemnon. Her mind is set on murder, her heart upon remorseless crime. So while she lives among the immortals, her song of shame will never die. But the ghost of Odysseus meanwhile went along moldering pathways and reached the wide realm of his father Laertes, who lived in the country and had dug his own garden. There the old man sat by himself and took his food in the servant's hut, for his heart was heavy with sorrow for his absent son. When he saw Odysseus, he wept and ran to him and threw his arms around his neck and kissed his head and spoke, You have come back, Odysseus, so that with your own eyes I could see you. I thought you had died on the sea, and some of the foreigners had stolen you away. But tell me now, and hide nothing from me, how you destroyed those men, how you came to the house. Then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn and answered him, Father, I will tell you the whole truth. I came to the house of my enemies, and with Athene and my son Telemachus, I killed them all. After that we washed and called Athene to our aid, and she likened herself in voice and appearance to Mentor. Then I told the serving women to assemble, and we led the faithless ones out between the round house and the unfaulted wall of the courtyard, and dealt with them as they deserved. Then I told Telemachus and the oxherd and swineherd to carry out the bodies, and we cleaned the beautiful house. When all was done, we feasted with our dear wives. So he spoke, and the heart within the old man went slack as he heard of the proud dealing of his son, and his knees and the heart within them went slack. But now the people heard of the slaughter of the suitors, and the whole city was in an uproar. Eupates, the father of Antinous, rose up and led them to the house of Odysseus, where they found him standing by the door. Laertes came out, and Odysseus stood beside him, and Telemachus and the two herdsmen. Athene stood beside Odysseus and likened herself to Mentor, and all stood there ready for the battle. Eupedes made a rush at Odysseus, but Odysseus threw his spear and drove it through his helmet. Eupedes fell thunderously, and his arms rattled upon him. Then the battle would have begun, and there would have been no stopping it. But Athene leapt down from high heaven and stood between them, and spoke in words of anger. "Stop, and be done with your harsh battle. The best thing is to come to an agreement, and let these men make peace." So she spoke, and they obeyed her. But Eupedes' wife, Eurydamas' wife, could not hold back from lamentation, and she ran to Odysseus and caught hold of his knees and kissed his hands. "We beg you, Odysseus, do not begrudge us our beloved, since you did not begrudge us before. We pray you to accept our sacrifice, to grant us peace, and to allow the people to eat in your halls, as in former times." Then resourceful Odysseus answered, "Let there be no more wrath. I will not begrudge you your beloved, and I will grant you peace and allow the people to eat in my halls." So the battle was stopped, and the people went away. Then Athene likened herself to Mentor, and Odysseus was happy when he saw her. She spoke to him in winged words, "Son of Laertes, seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, pray for the youth, and make your sacrifice, and give orders about the bow and the contest. Then we shall see, if you have mind for it, how all will come out best for you." So she spoke and led the way to the city, and Odysseus was glad, and made a sacrifice, and called on the gods, and they gave him peace. Then the people of Ithaca feasted in the halls of Odysseus, and the bow was put away, and all was well. And Odysseus sat with Penelope by the fire, and they held one another, and wept, each with their own tears, and Odysseus kissed her, and she kissed him, and all was well. And Athene stretched out her aegis from high above, and held back all the people, and put a sweet sleep upon them. And all was well. Conclusion. The Odyssey is a poem about return, not merely the physical journey home, but the return to oneself. Odysseus leaves Troy, a warrior, and arrives in Ithaca, a man who has learned that cunning is worth more than strength, that patience outlasts rage, and that the true test of a hero is not how he fights, but how he endures. The poem's genius lies in its structure. By beginning in medias res, with Telemachus searching for his father and Penelope waiting in the halls, Homer creates a double longing that resonates through every book. The audience knows what the characters do not, that Odysseus is alive, that he will return, that the suitors will pay for their crimes. This dramatic irony transforms every scene of suffering into a promise of justice. The gods in the Odyssey are not distant forces, but active participants in human fate. Athene and Poseidon pull Odysseus between them like a ship in a storm, and the other gods, Hermes, Calypso, Circe, Helios, each test or assist him according to their natures. Yet the poem's deepest insight is that even divine help cannot substitute for human choice. Odysseus must decide to leave Calypso's paradise. He must choose to hear the siren's song and survive. He must contain his rage at the suitors long enough to win the contest of the bow. The gods open doors, but Odysseus must walk through them. The recognition scenes, Odysseus and Penelope, Odysseus and Laertes, Odysseus and Euryclea, form the poem's emotional core. Each reunion is earned through suffering, tested by doubt, and sealed by knowledge that no one else could share. The scar, the bed, the olive tree. These are not mere plot devices, but the marks of identity itself. Odysseus is not simply the man who returns. He is the man who proves he has never left in spirit, even when separated by 20 years and the breadth of the known world. The poem's final image, Athene stretching out her aegis, putting a sweet sleep upon the people, is not a resolution but a suspension. The fighting is stopped, but not for all time. The Odyssey does not promise that all disputes can be settled. It promises only that, for this moment, peace is possible. This is Homer's gift, not the illusion of permanence, but the knowledge that even in a world of constant change, the bonds of love and home can hold. Index of key concepts. Nostos, return the Greek concept of homecoming, the central theme of the Odyssey. Odysseus's Nostos is both physical, his journey to Ithaca, and spiritual, his return to himself as husband, father, and king. Métis, cunning, the quality that distinguishes Odysseus from all other heroes. His intelligence, his ability to deceive, disguise, and outwit is his greatest weapon, more powerful than any spear. Xenia, guest friendship, the sacred bond between host and guest, violated by the suitors who consume Odysseus's wealth and pursue his wife. The poem's moral framework depends on this violation being punished. Hubris, excessive pride, the sin of the suitors, who believe they can take what they want without consequence. Antinous' death is the poem's turning point, the moment when divine and human justice converge. Cleos, glory, the fame that survives death, earned through heroic action. Odysseus's Cleos comes not from dying in battle, like Achilles, but from returning home, a new kind of heroism for a new age. Moira, fate, the portion allotted to each person by the gods. The poem explores whether humans can escape their Moira through cunning or whether fate is inexorable. Nostoi returns the collective homecomings of the Greek heroes after Troy. While Agamemnon returns only to be murdered, Odysseus's Nostos is the poem's triumph. Xenos, stranger/guest, the role Odysseus adopts in disguise, testing the hospitality of others and revealing their true characters. Techne, skill/craft, the art of making, whether in building the bed from the olive tree, stringing the bough, or crafting the lies that protect Odysseus on his journey. Iris, rainbow/messenger, the divine messenger who connects Olympus to earth, symbolizing the link between gods and mortals in the poem's theology. Eidos, shame/reverence, the quality the suitors lack and Penelope possesses, the sense of what is owed to others and to the gods. Eunomia, good order, the state of a well-governed household and city, restored when Odysseus kills the suitors and reclaims his throne. Reading comprehension questions. Why does Homer begin the Odyssey in medias res, with Telemachus and Penelope, rather than with Odysseus? What does this structural choice reveal about the poem's themes? Compare Odysseus's relationship with Athene to his relationship with Poseidon. How do these two divine forces shape his journey? And what does their opposition suggest about the nature of fate? Examine the role of disguise in the poem. When Odysseus appears as a beggar, what does he learn that he could not have learned as a king? How does disguise function as a tool of justice? Analyze the recognition scene between Odysseus and Penelope, Book 23. Why does Penelope test Odysseus with the bed? And what does his response reveal about the nature of their marriage? Compare the suitors' feast with the hospitality Odysseus receives among the Phaeacians. What distinguishes true Xenia from its violation? And how does each host behavior reflect their character? Examine the role of Telemachus in the poem. How does his journey to Pylos and Sparta prepare him for his role in the slaughter of the suitors? And what does his relationship with his father reveal about the nature of manhood? Discuss the poem's treatment of memory. How do the Phaeacians' games, the shade of Elpenor, and Odysseus's own memories function in the narrative? Analyze the final book's depiction of the underworld. Why does Homer include the conversation between Achilles and Agamemnon? And what does it suggest about the value of glory versus life? Examine the role of Calypso and Circe as obstacles and aids to Odysseus's Nostos. How do these women represent different forms of temptation? And what does Odysseus's rejection of immortality on Calypso's island reveal about his character? Discuss the poem's ending. Why does Athene intervene to stop the fighting? And what does the final image of sleep over the city suggest about the possibility of peace in Homer's world?